Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Quirkless Deku defeated Shigaraki. If you guys enjoy this movie, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content. And leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story stockinganarchysbow from AO3. So let's start the video. Prologue. Joe, hi there. I'm 𝐸𝐸 𝐍𝐸. So, you guys may be thinking, oh, 𝐸𝐸, where is 𝐍𝐸𝐭 Midoriya? Why is your last name 𝐍𝐸? Where is our main cast of characters? Well, I'll try my best to answer your questions here before we begin our story. 𝐍𝐸𝐭 and the former Class 1 had already graduated U and became pro heroes. 𝐍𝐸𝐭 Midoriya is currently the #1 pro hero in Japan. Following behind him is both Katsuki Bakugo and 𝐬𝐴 Todoroki. A couple of years ago there was a villain who went by the name of Tamura Shigaraki that was causing chaos and destruction around the country with his group, who were formerly called the League of Villains. 𝐍𝐸𝐭 Midoriya, alongside his classmates and fellow pro heroes, fought Shigaraki and his army in a battle that lasted days, and in the end came out victorious, locking Shigaraki and his group behind bars. Many heroes had lost their lives to Shigaraki's destruction, including some who helped rescue me from overhaul months prior. But their sacrifice helped save the lives of innocent civilians and restored Japan back to its peaceful state. I vividly remember Shigaraki's defeat well. As I was 7 at the time he was defeated by 𝐍𝐸𝐭 on live television. I had been rooting for 𝐍𝐸𝐭 to win, hoping that he wouldn't die during the battle. He didn't disappoint. He managed to beat Shigaraki using the full extent of his power. I remembered crying tears of joy as soon as I saw him raise his fist up in the air, yelling plus ultra. The world is now safe from the hands of evil, but for how long? I really don't know, nor do I want to find out. Before all the chaos surrounding 𝐍𝐸𝐭 and Shigaraki started, I was taken into custody by Yua High School, eventually getting adopted by Mr. Aizawa and taking on the last name Aizawa. For the next couple of years, I trained under him and Mirio, eventually having a good grasp onto my quirk and rewinded Mirio back to when he had his quirk. Managed to reverse a couple of major injuries 𝐍𝐸𝐭 sustained during his fight with Shigaraki alongside Recovery Girl. Fostered a stray kitten whom me and my dad named 𝐸𝐸𝐿. And just continued on with my life, trying my best to have a somewhat normal childhood. Yes, I still get nightmares sometimes about my time with the shy Hasakai, but they have been getting less and less frequent over the years. Things at Yua have drastically changed over the years. The entrance exam now has a variety of obstacles for contestants with all quirks to overcome. Momoko Todoroki ni Arazu became UA's principal after Nezu retired. Some former students became part of UA's faculty, and now there's a rehabilitation program offered towards those with criminal backgrounds. Currently, I am training to get into UA's hero course to pursue my dream of becoming a pro hero. With the help of my dad, Mirio, Deku, and my childhood friend Koda, I am indeed quite excited to take my exam and begin the next chapter of my life as a heroic student at UA. In the words of All Might, it is time to go beyond plus ultra. 𝐸𝐸𝐸 quickly woke up to the sound of her dad calling out her name. 𝐸𝐸's cat, 𝐸𝐸𝐿, quickly hopped off her bed and raced out of 𝐸𝐸's room, clearly spooked at the events that had just occurred over the span of a few seconds. 𝐸𝐸, you better hurry up and get dressed. You're running behind this morning. Aizawa's voice wafted as he walked out the door. Oh, and don't forget to fill up 𝐸𝐸𝐿's food bowl. We don't want a starving cat on our hands, now do we? Don't worry, Dad. I'll make sure to feed them before I head out, 𝐸𝐸 replied as she got up out of her bed, quickly throwing on the uniform she had laid out on her desk the night before. 𝐸𝐸 looked over at her alarm clock, the time reading 7:40. Well, maybe she had been running a bit late this morning, but that will not stop her from arriving to school on time. Perfect attendance is necessary in order to become a hero. 𝐸𝐸's dream job was to become a pro hero like her dad, Mirio, and Deku, and to help those in need of saving. If 𝐸𝐸 couldn't become a hero, then she could always enroll in a different program at UA and become a nurse. Regardless of which path she chooses to follow, 𝐸𝐸 wants to pick a career that would allow her to be able to save people, though she could always turn to vigilantism as a side job. Walking into the kitchen, 𝐸𝐸 noticed that her dad had already left for work and 𝐸𝐸𝐿 was about to take a bite out of her eggs. 𝐸𝐸 quickly grabbed her plate, immediately taking a bite out of the egg with her fork. Nope, 𝐸𝐸𝐿, you're not eating my breakfast. 𝐸𝐸𝐿's pout only lasted a couple of seconds before going back to playing with their ball of yarn right on the kitchen table. However, that wasn't her total concern as she quickly finished up her breakfast and grabbed her lemillion backpack, filling up 𝐸𝐸𝐿's food and water bowl before heading out the door to school. The school year was about to come to a close, and that meant 𝐸𝐸 has all summer to prepare for the UA entrance exams. 𝐸𝐸 was excited to go back to UA and become a student there, though 𝐸𝐸 wasn't for sure on what type of hero she would decide to become. She supposed that will be up for debate in the future, but for now she'll just stick to being herself. For now, 𝐸𝐸 just wants to live a normal life until the day she takes her entrance exam. Finally, almost a decade's worth of training will come into some use. Iri was excited and looking forwards to the future, beaming as she thought about the many possibilities becoming a hero could open up for her. "Iri, you're dazing off again," 𝐻𝐸𝐬 said as he tapped on his childhood friend's shoulder. Blinking, Iri turned around and looked her friend in the eyes. This was a normal occurrence for the two of them. Dating back from primary school to now, Iri would be daydreaming about becoming a hero and 𝐻𝐸𝐬 has to snap her out of it. Occasionally, Iri's thoughts would be interrupted by an outside force, but most of the time it's 𝐻𝐸𝐬 and his stern demeanor. "Sorry, I'm just so excited that this school year's finally ending." Iri smiled as she began to pack up her things. "You're applying to UA, right?" 𝐻𝐸𝐬 asked her. Iri nodded. "Yep. Going for the heroics course." 𝐻𝐸𝐬 grinned. "You know it. Oh, and don't forget I'm coming over to your place after school to train with Mr. Aizawa." Iri smiled. "You know I won't race you to the cafeteria." 𝐻𝐸𝐬 chuckled as he began to sprint out the classroom. "You're on." Rolling her eyes, Iri quickly placed her backpack on her left shoulder and immediately ran after 𝐻𝐸𝐬. She was determined not to lose for a third time this week. Before she could make a sharp turn down the hallway, Iri accidentally ran into her childhood rival 𝗪𝗛𝐻𝐸𝐬. 𝗪𝗪𝐻𝐸𝐬 and Iri never really gotten along throughout school, especially since the incident revolving around her quirk accidentally activating on him. No matter how many times she apologized to him, 𝗪𝗪𝐻𝐸𝐬 always seemed to went out of his way to either avoid or get slightly hostile with her. 𝗪𝗪𝐻𝐸𝐬 stumbled down on the ground as soon as he felt the impact of Iri's body colliding into his own, the girl landing nearby him rubbing her head. "Sorry." Iri immediately apologized as she quickly got up. "Watch where you're going," 𝗪𝗪𝐻𝐸𝐬 responded as he managed to get up from the ground. "Running in the halls is against school rules, Aizawa." Iri nodded. "I know. I'll be more careful next time." 𝗪𝗪𝐻𝐸𝐬 rolled his eyes. Grabbing her bag off the ground, Iri rushed off towards the cafeteria and managed to make it there before the bell rung. Despite the major setback, she somehow got there before 𝐻𝐸𝐬 could. Finally, she can boast about. Iri's eyes widened as she saw 𝐻𝐸𝐬 sit at their usual table with a grin on his face. "She lost. How? I win yet again," 𝐻𝐸𝐬 said as he tossed an apple towards Iri. Catching the apple, Iri huffed in annoyance as she set her bag beside 𝐻𝐸𝐬's. "Make that 4 times this week she has lost to him. Are you excited for the upcoming UA entrance exam?" 𝐻𝐸𝐬 nodded. "We got 2 weeks to prepare for it. I plan on going in and saving as many ectoplasm clones as I can. What about you?" Iri shrugged. "I haven't really thought that far." Taking a bite out of his food and swallowing it, 𝐻𝐸𝐬 looked at Iri with an unamused look on his face. "Well, everyone in our school is going to be applying for a spot, so you better come up with a plan soon. I'd hate to not be in the same school as you." Iri smiled. "Don't worry, I'll come up with a plan soon. Who knows, I might outrank you on the leaderboard." 𝐻𝐸𝐬 snickered. "Still not tired of losing?" "Never," Iri responded before looking down at 𝐻𝐸𝐬's lunch tray. "So, what's for lunch?" At long last, after an extremely long and uneventful couple of months, it was time for Iri to take the UA entrance exam. Iri has been waiting for this day for quite a while now. She knows she has a lot of potential to pass the exam, but she also knew the many challenges she would have to succumb in order to get into her dream school. When she wasn't doing her schoolwork, chores, or getting into yet another friendly competition with 𝐻𝐸𝐬, Iri had been training with her father and his former student, 𝗫𝗠𝑠ū Hitoshi. Iri has mastered her quirk to the extent where she wouldn't accidentally rewind someone to the point where they never even existed in the first place. Now she could rewind a person back to before they even had their quirk in the first place, but without de-aging them. Aside from all the extensive training she's been through, Iri still hasn't came up with a plan as to how she's going to ace the practical portion of the entrance exams. On one hand, she could always go and take out the big bad villain hiding somewheres in the danger zone. But on the other, she could just take out a bunch of robots and rack up points like that. To Iri, none of them plans would work out well for her. She's not extremely reckless like most test takers on, nor does she want the glory in taking out the big bad. Sure, taking out the villains and their henchmen are great plans, but Iri wants to do something nobody else would think about doing. Wait, that actually gives her an idea. Iri has an extensive background in the medical field, being trained by Recovery Girl herself to treat and care for injuries of any kind. She also has some basic first aid and CPR training under her belt, both of which would be extremely useful in heroics. Iri grinned. The overseers will never know what hit them. Iri quickly made her way downstairs to the kitchen and made herself some toast for breakfast. She had already packed a bag that contained her exercise clothes, knowing that later on during the day she would have to take the practical exam. The written portion of the entrance exam didn't really worry Iri much, since she had studied for most of yesterday afternoon. Regardless of all her preparation and master plan, Iri was quite nervous. Would she pass the UA entrance exam? Is she going to have to ditch her longtime dream of attending UA and having to aim for a different school? The possibilities are endless. For now, Iri was focused on her present task, or tasks at hand, eating breakfast, arriving at UA, taking the written portion of the exams, and rack up enough points in the practical to get into the hero course. To 𝐸𝐸, that seemed like a good plan, though she was definitely going to end up doing a lot of improvising during the exam. Regardless, it's time for 𝐸𝐸 to prove herself worthy of having a spot in UA's hero course. She's made it this far, she can't fail now. After all, this is the beginning of her journey. The written portion of the UA entrance exam wasn't exactly that difficult, but it wasn't quite simple either. 𝐸𝐸 expected this, mentally thanking herself that she studied beforehand. But she didn't expect for there to be several trick questions regarding the history of heroics on the exam either. Thankfully, she had made it through the test, making sure to double-check her answers before finishing. Now all she has to do is wait for the others to finish and for the practical exam to start. About an hour has passed since 𝐸𝐸 had finished the written part of the exam, the auditorium filling up with all of the students who are taking the practical portion. Amongst the crowd, 𝐸𝐸 saw her friend 𝐬𝐸 sitting in the front row beside an unfamiliar girl with short lavender hair. Further down from her was Tamashiro, who is currently bickering with a brown-haired guy with wings on his back. It was quite the interesting bunch gathered here in the auditorium. So many cool-looking physical quirks and mutations. 𝐸𝐸 was quite excited to see how many people were going to pass. Suddenly the auditorium got quiet. 𝐸𝐸 looked over at the stage and noticed the principal of UA herself walking up onto the stage alongside several other staff members. The principal introduced herself as Momo Todoroki, otherwise known as the Pro Hero 𝐀𝐦. Alongside her was Shinsu Hitoshi of Class 1A, Monoma Nito of Class 1B, Huryu Rin of Class 1 degrees Celsius, Tenya Ida of Class 3A, and Hatsune Mei of the Support Department. Principal Todoroki explained how the practical portion of the exams work. You will be ranked based off of how many villain and rescue points you receive. The top 40 will then be determined based on their actions, motivations, and overall demeanor whether or not they'll get into the hero course. There will be obstacles and challenges across each individual zone, and the exam will be over in an hour. Are you guys ready? Principal Todoroki asked. Everyone cheered and raised their fist up in response. All right, the exam will begin in 15 minutes. Head over to your assigned zones now and get ready. Quickly, everyone walked out of the auditorium and headed to the restrooms to change into some exercise clothes. 𝐸𝐸 tied her hair up into a ponytail and swiftly made her way over to ground beta. This was it. She has been training for this exact moment all her life. Before 𝐸𝐸 could walk up towards the gate, she accidentally tripped on her shoe. As she was quickly falling towards the ground, 𝐸𝐸 felt someone tugging her by the back of her tracksuit and pulling her up. It's bad luck to fall down before an exam, an unfamiliar voice said as he let go of her tracksuit. 𝐸𝐸 smiled at him. Thank you very much. It's the least I could do. The teen responded as he held out his hand. Shimano Katsuma. 𝐸𝐸 accepted the kind boy's handshake. Aizawa 𝐸𝐸. Good luck on your exam, Aizawa-chan, Katsuma said as he let go of 𝐸𝐸's hand. You too, Shimano-kun, 𝐸𝐸 responded. Was this the start of a blooming friendship? Before 𝐸𝐸 could get too lost in her thoughts, the alarm went off. The practical portion of the UA entrance exam has now begun. She couldn't get distracted now. Rushing into the area, 𝐸𝐸 made her way over towards a building and noticed some robots holding 5 ectoplasm clones hostage. Noticing the back entrance was unlocked, 𝐸𝐸 snuck in and ambushed the robots from the back. Ripping an arm off of one and using it as a laser, 𝐸𝐸 cut the ropes and managed to set the ectoplasm clones free. Quickly grabbing a nearby first aid kit, 𝐸𝐸 checked the clones and other nearby civilians for any injuries before looking over at the vault and making sure nothing of any value was stolen. Thankfully, nothing was stolen. So 𝐸𝐸 grabbed the robot arm off the floor and ran out of the building in search of more people to rescue. Unbeknownst to 𝐸𝐸, somebody was watching her from the shadows the whole time. We have quite an interesting group of people this year, Shinsu said as he and the other staff members watched the exams. I especially like that black-haired kid with the emotion manipulation quirk. He seems like he has a lot of potential. Shinsu, now is not the time to be biased. We're here to judge the examies and see which ones would be best suited for heroics. Ida exclaimed as he waved his arms up and down robotically. You people are no fun. 𝐁𝐻𝐸 pouted as she stared at the screen with a boring expression on her face, especially the people taking the test. All they're doing is trying to rack up as many points as they can before time runs out. There's nothing particularly interesting about any of them. You might want to rephrase that statement. Hato, her wife 𝐸𝐸 pointed at one of the monitors. This girl seems quite interesting. 𝐁𝐻𝐸's eyes widened as she glanced over at the monitor. Oh my god, it's 𝐸𝐸-chan. I can't believe she's taking the exam as well. Aizawa 𝐸𝐸. Of course she is taking the exam. I helped train her alongside Mr. Aizawa and Tagata, Shinsu responded in a monotone voice. She certainly seems to have a lot of potential. Checking over civilians to make sure they're not injured. Heroic. Helping her fellow test takers out. Simply amazing, Ida said as he glanced over at the scoreboard. And she's in the top 42. Incredible. Let's hope she fares well going up against Tagada-kun. Knowing her, 𝐸𝐸 will do just fine, Shinsu muttered as he glanced over at another monitor. But on the other hand, we need to discuss about Razu Gensui. 𝐸𝐸 quickly ran up a hill and rescued a civilian from a two-pointer grasp, using the arms she ripped off from the previous robot and cutting them free. Swiftly taking down the two-pointer, 𝐸𝐸 checked and made sure the civilian was all right before heading off to save more. So far her plan has been a success. She had already gotten a bunch of points for helping out injured test takers, using her medical knowledge to locate the injury and treat it to the best of her ability. 𝐸𝐸 was sure that would impress the overseers. After all, not many 15-year-old kids know how to treat serious injuries like she did. As she was about to turn left towards an alleyway, 𝐸𝐸 was swiftly kicked in the gut by an unfamiliar force. Power. Scratch that. She knew all good and well who was attacking her. Halt. You do goody hero, for I am the elusive permeation villain, 𝐸𝐸. Mirio exclaimed as he got into his signature fighting pose. Mirio, you idiot. You're supposed to come up with a completely different name for your villain persona, not use your actual hero name. A voice reprimanded Mirio from his eardrum. Mirio scratched the back of his head and chuckled. Sorry about that. I sort of forgot. But anyways, hero, it's now time for you to face your doom. 𝐸𝐸 knew it was pointless to take Mirio on. If she would try to land a hit on him, he'll just vanish into the ground or make it to where her fist would go through his body. The only thing she could do now is stall until time ran out. Getting into a battle stance, 𝐸𝐸 was prepared to take Mirio on in a fight. Before she could even do anything, he was unknowingly hit in the face with some sort of substance. Where did it come from? Looking up, 𝐸𝐸 noticed a brown-haired male with fairy-like wings flying up above them. So that's where the substance came from. It's a part of his quirk. Interesting. It seems you have managed to find the main villain. The teen asked her as he conjured up another ball of mysterious stuff with his hands. Need some help? 𝐸𝐸 nodded. Thank you very much. The teen responded with a smile on his face. It's the least I could do. Wiping the stuff off from his face, Mirio immediately sprung into action. He activated his quirk and dove into the ground, coming up at an angle that was not visible to the flying teen. Before Mirio could land a hit, 𝐸𝐸 fired a laser directly at him. Activating his quirk once more, the laser went directly through him and Mirio dove into a nearby wall. As he was about to come out and attempt a surprise attack on 𝐸𝐸, the boy launched a ball of pixie dust at him. Before he dove into the ground, he managed to shove 𝐸𝐸 into the boy's attack. 𝐸𝐸 coughed as she inhaled the dust attack, trying her best to regain her breath. The boy's eyes widened as Mirio came directly at him, ready to punch his lights out. Before he could do so, 𝐸𝐸 threw the robot arm at Mirio. Mirio activated his quirk and dove into a nearby building, avoiding the attack with ease. The boy caught the arm and threw it again at Mirio, the latter dodging it before it could hit him. 𝐸𝐸 internally facepalmed. There went her only accessible weapon. Not bad. 25 minutes left. Show me what you got. Mirio exclaimed as he ran directly at the two teenagers with his fist ready to knock them out. 𝐸𝐸's eyes widened. Yep. This was officially the end. She and the other kid may have put up a good fight. Even then, that wasn't enough to take down a top pro hero like Mirio. Before she could react, an arrow shot past 𝐸𝐸 and hit Mirio directly on the side. Mirio's eyes widened. He just got hit by an unknown individual. Stop right there, why you villain? Another kid shouted as he quickly made another arrow and aimed his bow at Mirio. Mirio was stunned, emotions quickly overwhelming him as he felt a sudden urge to run away from the battle. He was frozen in fear. His emotions have gotten the best of him. Was this the kid's quirk? Quickly, both 𝐸𝐸 and the boy with wings sprung into action, pinning Mirio down while the light blue-haired boy wrapped his hands up in capturing tape. They have did it. They managed to stop the main villain. The boy with wings sighed with relief. Good work, team. 𝐸𝐸 smiled. I can't believe we did it. I can't believe I actually shot a pro hero. A pro hero. The light blue-haired boy anxiously exclaimed as his bow evaporated into thin air. Oh, I'm doomed. Doomed. 𝐸𝐸 could relate to how the boy was feeling. Even if they have managed to accomplish something impossible, the overseers were still going to send out more villains for the trio to fight. They certainly were doomed. Lighten up, you two, the winged boy said with a determined look on his face. If we stick together, then we can certainly take down any villains in our way. I don't even know who you both are. Why should I trust that you both won't stab me in the back? The light blue-haired boy shouted with a fearful look on his face. Well, I can certainly promise you I would do no such thing. I came here to make friends, not enemies. The winged boy responded. I'm James Blair. 𝐸𝐸 smiled. I want to get into UA and become a hero the right way, not use people as stepping stones and desert them. The blue-haired boy sighed. Fine, I suppose I can trust you both. For now, my name's Yumero Kokoro, and I want to also become a hero worthy of saving people. Well, you certainly did just that today. James grinned. Thanks for the help. Thank you, Yumero-kun. 𝐸𝐸 cheerfully responded. We couldn't have taken 𝐸𝐸 down without you. Kokoro's face immediately turned red from the praise. Let's just finish this exam up and talk later. Both 𝐸𝐸 and James nodded, rushing off into the distance. The trio would continue to stick together and take on any remaining villains they would come across and rescue civilians from harm's way. Eventually the timer ran out. Everyone quickly scrambling away from the city and rushing off towards the exit. "Dad, look, my letter came in the mail today," 𝐸𝐸 excitedly shouted as she held up the letter high in the air. It has been a few weeks since the UA entrance exam and 𝐸𝐸 was anxiously waiting for her letter to come in the mail. Even Koda was sweating bullets at the thought of him potentially failing the exam. That only added on to how nervous 𝐸𝐸 felt. "Well then, let's open the letter and see if you got accepted into UA," Aizawa said as he sat down at the table. 𝐸𝐸 shakily nodded. "But what if I get rejected? If by any chance you got rejected by UA, 𝐸𝐸, then they're clearly not worth your time. You have already proven yourself worthy in my eyes that you do have the potential to be an amazing hero. And if UA can't see that, then they're the blind ones, because they are missing out on a student with serious potential." Aizawa responded to his daughter, "I'm still proud of you either way, 𝐸𝐸." 𝐸𝐸 teared up a bit. "Dad, now then, are you going to open your letter now or are we going to have to wait until tomorrow?" Aizawa asked his daughter. 𝐸𝐸 quickly wiped the tears off of her face and hesitantly smiled. "Let's open it." 𝐸𝐸 slowly opened up the letter she had received from you. Right as soon as she opened it, she was met with a hologram of Mirio explaining to her that she had gotten accepted into UA with a total of 679 points, falling shortly behind a girl named Razu Gensui. Both 𝐸𝐸 and Aizawa were excited to say the least. "I can't believe it. I got into UA," 𝐸𝐸 excitedly exclaimed as she held her acceptance letter up in the air proudly. Nor and Nico trying their hardest to smack the letter out of 𝐸𝐸's hand. Aizawa smiled. "I'm proud of you, 𝐸𝐸. You truly have grown as a person, and I'm sure you'll make a fine hero someday." 𝐸𝐸 teared up a bit. "I won't let you down, Dad. I promise to do well in school and become the best hero I can be. I'm going to take your word for it, kiddo. We still got a few weeks in advance to purchase some stuff for your new dorm room and send in your hero costume design to the support companies for making," Aizawa said as he got up to grab a cup of coffee from the kitchen. "Oh, don't worry, I'll invite Koda over and we can go over our costume designs. I'm sure he'll love to see what I plan to do with mine. Speaking of Koda, I should call him and tell him my results came in," 𝐸𝐸 responded as she quickly pulled out her phone and dialed Koda's number. "As for the dorm room, we have all summer to pick things out." Aizawa nodded. "Okay, just remember that I'm proud of you, 𝐸𝐸." 𝐸𝐸 smiled brightly. "Thank you for being there for me all these years, Dad." "It's no problem, 𝐸𝐸," Aizawa responded in a sincere tone. "I would do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant I get to be your dad. Now go along and call Koda up. I want to enjoy my coffee in relative peace." 𝐸𝐸 snickered as she dialed Koda's phone number. "Will do." The day was finally here. It was 𝐸𝐸's first day at UA. She has been waiting several years for this moment. She's now a student at her dream school. How exciting is that? Luckily enough, 𝐸𝐸 had packed up all her things in advance and placed them in her new dorm room. Soon after she did so, 𝐸𝐸 got a call from Koda, telling her that he also got into UA. Why does he always have to wait until the last minute to do things? Stupid Koda-kun. 𝐸𝐸 chuckled at the thought of her friend struggling to get his luggage through the door. 𝐸𝐸 was currently standing at the gates right now with her school bag in hand, excited for what's about to come. She already knew her way around UA, so getting lost wasn't her main concern. What her main concern was is if a certain somebody would be her homeroom teacher. Ugh, that would be disastrous. Ignoring that thought, 𝐸𝐸 thought of all the possible things she could do throughout her 3 years at UA. Maybe she could make some new friends, expand on her skills, maybe even fall in love with somebody. As 𝐸𝐸 entered the building, she was greeted by the same kid with light brown hair that she had seen previously at the beginning of the exam asking for directions. Katsuma, was it? 𝐸𝐸, in an act of kindness, decided to approach him. "Hey, are you lost?" "Huh." Katsuma turned around. His eyes widened at the sight of a familiar face. "Aizawa-chan. You go to UA too?" 𝐸𝐸 nodded. "Yep. I see you also got into UA." "Yeah, I did. Somehow. I barely made it into the hero course though," Katsuma responded as he nervously scratched the back of his head. "Well, I'm glad that you passed. It's nice seeing a familiar face here. Asides from that of my rather annoying friend," 𝐸𝐸 said, mumbling the last part. Katsuma chuckled. "Tell me about it. Hey, do you by any chance know your way around here?" My dad used to work here, and I also used to live here when I was younger, so I know my way around here pretty well," 𝐸𝐸 responded. "I take it as you're also heading to Class 1A. Katsuma nodded. Could you please show me the way?" "Sure." 𝐸𝐸 smiled as she gestured for Katsuma to follow her. Well, at least she now knows 2 people that are in her class. Walking down the hallway, 𝐸𝐸 and Katsuma continued to chat about various topics until they arrived at a door that said 1A. As soon as 𝐸𝐸 and Katsuma approached the door, they were greeted by the sight of Tamashiro and Koda arguing over something. 𝐸𝐸 sighed heavily. Of course she would be put in the same class as Tamashiro. Do you know those two, 𝐬𝐻𝐬? Katsuma asked her, pointing at both Tamashiro and Kota as they entered the classroom. Oh, the silver-haired one is Tamashiro. We go way back. We're actually rivals, 𝐸 responded. He's not that bad to be around. If you can get past his brash nature. Katsuma sat down at his assigned desk, which was ironically right beside 𝐸 and the black-haired one. That's my best friend Kota. We also go way back, been friends since primary school. He's quite competitive and arrogant, but I suppose we all can be like that sometimes, 𝐸 said before quickly pointing at a familiar beanbag laying against the wall. And that's our homeroom teacher. Katsuma's eyes widened. Our teacher is a yellow caterpillar. 𝐸 chuckled. You'll see soon. A couple of minutes passed since 𝐸 had made that statement. The bell had already rung and their classmates were already in their seats. Everyone was wondering where their teacher was at. Did he get lost? Unzipping his sleeping bag, Shinsu Hitoshi came out and ruffled his wavy purple hair, yawing as he grabbed a clipboard off of the podium and glared at his students. Katsuma's eyes shot open. He finally understood what 𝐸 meant by "you'll see soon." Their teacher, their homeroom teacher, was the fucking underground hero, Puppet Master. Everyone was excitedly whispering about the reveal. This truly was a shock to the entire class, as Puppet Master wasn't exactly the social type. Alright everyone, settle down. I know you all are excited for your first day here at UA, but that's no excuse for you all to slack off today, their teacher said as he clicked on his pen. Time for roll call. Hanmo Shokubatsu, here. Satsuki Asui, here. Imero Kokoro, H here. Takabashi Itsuhaku, here. Iri Aizawa, here. James Blair, here. Shimano Katsuma, here. Razu Gensui, here. Tamashiro Atenko, here. Izumi Kota, here. Mizu Sosa, here. Kanjo Kantaroru, here. Miyako Utonium, here. Kaikatishi, here. Katsu Kurai, here. Suno Ikari, here. 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐭 here. Shiren Yuta, here. Ikaku Sensa, here. Alright. Shinsu placed down a bunch of files onto the podium. Welcome to the hero course. I am your teacher, Hitoshi Shinsu, or as many of you know me by my hero name, Puppet Master. I will also be your homeroom teacher this year. 𝐸 already figured as much. He was her dad's former student. She remembered back when Shinsu had applied to become a teacher at UA. He had told her that he wanted to make a safer environment for his future students and run a classroom without discrimination. It was a great goal, one 𝐸 respects. Today we will be taking a quirk apprehension test. I will be judging each and every one of your quirks to see if you all are fit to be in my class. Call me a mini eraserhead if you'd like, but I would prefer to get a head start and know what types of quirks I'm going to have to deal with before making plans on how to improve them. But his method of doing so is quite similar to that of her dad's. A familiar guy with light blue hair and sickly yellow skin raised his hand up in the air. Sensei, shouldn't we be going to the school assembly today instead of having a quirk apprehension test? I'm sorry, Mr. Yumero, but we won't be going to the assembly today. Besides, you wouldn't be missing out on much anyways. Hitoshi responded to the boy's question. I heard Deku, Ground Zero, and Shoto were supposed to be there. Such a shame we're going to be missing out on such a great opportunity to meet them in person. 𝐸 heard a couple of the kids whisper around her. Hitoshi waited a few minutes before he decided to speak up. I'm sorry, students, but like I have previously said before, we won't be attending the school assembly. If any of you don't approve of the way I run my class, then the door is to your left. I'm sure there are other courses here at UA that will welcome you all with open arms. Oddly enough, nobody had gotten up from their seats. Shinsu grinned at the sight, making 𝐸 slightly flinch. She could already tell he was taking extreme pleasure in watching his students internally panic. Quite similar methods to her dad indeed. Well, I suppose I won't have to edit my attendance in classroom charts tonight. I apologize for that inconvenience. Welcome to Class 1A, students, where we will be training to the point where you all have sufficiently mastered your abilities and know your own personal limits. We will be going on field trips, doing internships with other pro heroes, having one-on-one spars, and a practical and written midterm and end-of-the-year exams, Shinsu explained. Now, I want you all to go change into your proper gym uniforms that were assigned to you by the school. I will meet you all on the practice field in 15 minutes. Oh, and I don't condone perverts in my classroom, so if any of you boys, girls, or anyone else with different labels look in on others changing, I will personally send you packing out the campus door. Got it? Yes, sir, everyone said at the same time as they headed out the door with their gym bags in hand. Okay, class, we will begin the quirk apprehension test with the 50-meter dash, then the grip strength test, the standing long jump, the sustained sideways jump, and the final test, the pitch. Anyone who doesn't do well or barely puts in enough effort into the test will get expelled from my class. Do you all understand? Shinsu asked his class as he prepared his clipboard and stopwatch for the 50-meter dash. Yes, sir. The entire class said all at once while preparing themselves both physically and mentally for the test. Okay, first up is Hanmo Shokubatsu. Shinsu called out as a girl with olive-toned skin and slightly dark brown hair stepped forward. The girl, who he presumed was 𝐻𝐻𝐬, started running on the 50-meter track, her time ending up at around 23.4 seconds. Next up was a guy with black hair and a not-so-muscular body, who ended up at 12.3 seconds, which impressed Eri quite a bit despite his lanky nature. Eventually, it was Eri's turn to complete the 50-meter dash, and she was quite nervous to say the least. She didn't know if she could possibly beat her previous middle school record of 23.7 seconds or if she was going to end up falling behind in class and lose her place in the elite class 1. Eri put her fists into balls, determined to at least try and put all of her effort into finishing this exam and coming out on top. Eri put both of her feet at the beginning of the starting line, waiting for the whistle to blow. She heard the whistle go off. She was ready. She took off, and her time ended up at an impressive 10:30. Yes, a new personal best. She actually did it. The rest of the tests flew by, with Eri ranking number 7th and on the scoreboard, right behind a guy named 𝐀𝐦 and in front of some girl named Razu Jensui, who ranked in 8th. 𝐜𝐻𝐦 ended up in 10th place and 𝐶𝐻𝐬 ended up in 9th place. Today has been quite the eventful day. We have gathered intel from an anonymous source that a new villain group is quickly clicking off the channel. A girl with mid-length off-red hair stretched as she leaned back on the sofa of her slummy apartment. It was about time her group had finally made the news. After years of meticulous planning and waiting, finally she would get to show the world what she is made of. It's been 11 years since the downfall and murder of her family. 11 years since she was last locked away and forgotten about in the depths of her family's laboratory. 11 years since she had last been to America. A lot has changed in those 11 years. She has changed as a person in those years. She had went from forgotten to the eventual future head of an organization centered around ridding the world of quirks. From homeless to getting by, from innocent to merge. She wasn't about to finish that thought. Thinking about her deceased family wasn't worth the time nor her concern. She has much bigger goals to worry about after all. And they all center around Eri Aizawa. A few days ago, it was hard for a nobody like herself to gain a decent reputation in the criminal underworld due to being quirkless, but she had managed to gain some notoriety over time for her extremist ideals. She hates quirks with a burning passion. They were the cause of her family's demise years before she moved to Japan. Nobody, not even the pro heroes, even bothered to save them. Her goal in life is to put an end to quirks once and for all. She knew of one other person who had attempted to do the same thing she did a few years prior, but unfortunately he's currently armless and locked up in prison with the rest of his crew, something that's going to get changed real soon. There are still traces of the quirk erasing bullets out there, though unfortunately they have a time limit as to how long a person's quirk would be inactive. The ones that permanently removed a quirk got destroyed at the end of Tamura Shigaraki's reign of terror and destruction, though it wouldn't necessarily be impossible to create some herself. She supposed that would have to wait until she could get a proper lab set up somewhere plus some funding to purchase the supplies needed to create such a drug. One of her assistants, Shino, was currently typing away on her computer, probably gathering some useful data on the men they were supposed to meet later on today. She knew that something was bound to go wrong during the meeting, so she had decided to not bring her assistant with her to meet the guys and recruit them to her cause. One of the men had a strength enhancer quirk. The other could emit poisonous gas from his pores. Luckily, she didn't forget to pack a gas mask just for that particular reason. She was always one step ahead of people, hence how she was never caught by the pro heroes. It was around 11 p.m. at night, the time she and the guys had arranged to meet up in an abandoned factory. She had already physically and mentally prepared herself for this meeting, because she knew that she wasn't going to get out of this without sustaining a few major injuries at best. She had already calculated each and every possible scenario beforehand. A few minutes after her arrival, the guys came out from right behind her, clearly in an attempt to either ambush, kidnap, rape, or murder her. The possibilities were endless. Why can't anyone be civil these days? She thought before putting on her gas mask and pulling out a pocket knife. She knew that this was 99.7% most likely an attempt to get rid of her. Hired assassins from an opposing force. Those two had completely underestimated her, though. Despite her small but rather curvy figure, she knew how to fight dirty, using her vast knowledge of the human body and flexibility to her advantage. The strength enhancer guy was hard to take down, especially with the poisonous one right up her ass. Thankfully, she managed to evade a good bit of their attacks, waiting patiently for the right time to strike. She already had a plan in motion, but for now she would have to evade, run, and wait patiently, and patience was something she did not have right now. Eventually, the guy's attacks just got slower and slower, but they were still considered a threat to her. She had to dispose of these threats before they ended up causing more damage. She carefully maneuvered her way around the two men, slicing their main arteries open with ease and precision. She watched as the two crooks crashed down onto the ground, writhing in pain and gasping for air. They should have learned not to underestimate their opponent by now, but alas, some people just lack basic common sense. Scoffing, she turned and left the abandoned building. What a waste of time. But that left one question running rampant in her mind. Who was trying to kill her? Well, if someone is truly out to kill her, then she'll have to be a bit more careful on who she can trust. Present day. It was a bright and sunny afternoon and 𝐸𝐸 had just gotten off from school and was heading towards the 𝗏𝐻 Heights Alliance building alongside 𝐬𝐻𝐬 and 𝐶𝐸𝐬. The school day had been rough, defense classes, impending homework assignments, 𝐸𝐸 and 𝐬𝐻𝐬 having a run-in with Principal Todoroki while trying to take some paperwork over to the development studio for Mrs. Hatsume to look over for their sensei. Two students getting into a fist fight in the hallway and preparing for the impending field trip to the USJ. 𝐸𝐸 couldn't wait to get back into her dorm room and relax, maybe daydream a bit while she's getting her homework assignments done. As soon as 𝐸𝐸 and her friends arrived to the dorms, they noticed that everyone in their class was crowding around the TV. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 managed to snag a spot near the TV, with 𝐸𝐸 and 𝐶𝐸𝐬 following from behind. There was a news report on two men, both of whom were D-ranked villains, being found dead inside of an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Holy shit, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 said in shock. Ever since Deku had become the #1 hero, crime has been at an all-time low in the country. Hearing that two people have been murdered in cold blood was quite shocking. What changed? You're not lying when you say holy shit, a girl with dark green hair and a face that oddly enough looked like 𝗵𝘃𝗲's replied as she sat down right beside 𝐸𝐸. It seems like we have an up-and-coming serial killer out on the loose. 𝐸𝐸 looked at the girl as if she was crazy. We haven't had to worry about a serial killer running rampant since Deku became the symbol of peace. Well, it seems the peace won't be lasting for long. The girl heavily sighed. I suppose we should make the best of the situation for now. The pros and the authorities will handle this mysterious group or individual and take them to justice before anyone else gets hurt, or worse, killed. 𝐶𝐸𝐬 smiled a bit, knowing that what she said was most likely true. You're Satsuki, right? The girl smiled back at them. 𝐴𝐻𝐬. And you three are Aizawa 𝐸𝐸, Shimano 𝐶𝐸𝐬, and Izumi 𝐬𝐻𝐬. The trio nodded. 𝐴𝐻𝐬. Your face looks quite similar. You're 𝗵𝘃𝗲's sister, right? 𝐸𝐸 asked her. Satsuki nodded with a bright smile on her face. 𝐴𝐻𝐬. It must be quite nice having a pro hero for a sister, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 commented. Satsuki giggled a bit. Oh, we used to get into a lot of mischief together when we were younger. The same with our brother, 𝐶𝐸𝐬. Even when she got accepted into U and eventually became a pro, she still made time for me and our family. My big sister, Mahoro, got accepted into UA 2 years before I did. She's actually a third-year hero course student who's doing her internship at Ground Zero's hero agency as his sidekick, 𝐶𝐸𝐬 said with a smile on his face. So yes, having a pro-hero sibling is cool, even if mine's still just a sidekick. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 snickered a bit. Me and Ms. Aizawa here can't relate. 𝐸𝐸 glared at him intensely. Okay, Waterboy, I get it, we're both only childs. Oh, and call me Ms. Aizawa one more time and I'll show you my inner Aizawa, got it? 𝐬𝐻𝐬 shrugged. Can't make you any promises. Either address me as 𝐸𝐸, Aizawa-chan, or 𝐸𝐸-chan. Do not address me as anything else or I will rewind you out of existence. 𝐸𝐸 threatened him in a playful tone. She knew he was just joking with her, might as well play along. 𝐬𝐻𝐬 smirked. Make me, Ms. Aizawa. Oh, I most certainly will, 𝐸𝐸 said as she pounced onto 𝐬𝐻𝐬, rolling them both into the wall. The duo chuckled as they continued to playfully bicker, catching the attention of their fellow classmates. Are they always like this? Satsuki whispered into 𝐶𝐸𝐬's ear. 𝐶𝐸𝐬 nodded. They're childhood friends. Satsuki giggled. Ah, that makes sense. It almost looks like they're an actual couple with the way they bicker. 𝐸𝐸's aromantic. 𝐶𝐸𝐬 responded. But yeah, it does look like they're a couple when they argue. Satsuki smiled. It's adorable. It is, 𝐶𝐸𝐬 said as he glanced over at the clock. Hey, would you like to head over to the gym with me? We could train and possibly get to know each other more. Sure, Satsuki responded in a cheerful tone. Just let me grab my uniform. 𝐶𝐸𝐬 nodded. Okay. It was late in the afternoon when 𝐶𝐸𝐬 and Satsuki got back from training, and the two were in a deep conversation about their favorite pro heroes. Satsuki was rambling on about how cool anime is while 𝐶𝐸𝐬 listened to her speak. As the two walked through the door, they were sprayed in the face with water by 𝐬𝐻𝐬. Well, it seems like you two are having fun, 𝐬𝐻𝐬 said as he got up off the ground. I didn't know you had a girlfriend, 𝐶𝐸𝐬. Satsuki snickered while 𝐶𝐸𝐬 tried to get his thoughts together. As she's not my girlfriend. What's this about 𝐶𝐸𝐬 having a girlfriend? I didn't know he was dating someone, 𝐸𝐸 asked as she walked out of her room with a smile on her face. 𝐶𝐸𝐬's face was as red as a tomato. We're not dating, and I'm still very much single. Yeah, we just went to the gymnasium to train while you two were wrestling each other. Sorry, you both assumed otherwise, Satsuki said in a playful tone as she walked over to the kitchen to grab herself a bottle of water. By the way, you both argue like an old married couple. 𝐬𝐻𝐬's face turned cherry red while 𝐸𝐸's remained neutral. Satsuki snickered as she took a drink out of her water bottle. What? I'm not lying. I'm aromantic, Satsuki-iri responded in a calm tone. Besides, we're childhood friends. We have the tendency to bicker and get into petty competitions sometimes. I already figured as much, Satsuki said. Katsuma already told me you were aromantic. I just thought it would be funny to joke about your weird friendship with Izumi-kun. Well, you sure got Kota real good, Iri chuckled. His face is still cherry red. Shut up, an embarrassed Kota exclaimed. Iri lightly shrugged. So, are you guys excited about the field trip to the USJ we're going on in 2 weeks? Katsuma nodded and Satsuki gave her a thumbs up. Let's hope this field trip doesn't turn out to be a disaster. Iri looked at Kota with a concerned expression. But the League of Villains are locked away now, Kota, and there will be pro heroes there as well as our sensei. I can guarantee you all 100% that nothing will go wrong while we're there. I heard rumors that 𝗬𝗲𝗍 is going to be there supervising us. 𝗬𝗲𝗍, the 𝗬𝗲𝗍 that is engaged to the number 1 hero, Deku, the number 8 pro hero. Satsuki asked her. Damn. And I thought this school year couldn't get any better. Katsuma snickered a bit. Don't jinx it now, Satsuki, or else something bad will happen when we're there. As soon as Katsuma said that, Noriko hopped right out of Iri's arms and went over to the couch to take a nap. Iri shrugged and went over to the kitchen to grab a snack. Trust me, I'm sure everything will go out just fine. The last time you said that, Noriko ended up trashing your room while we were downstairs eating some soba, Kota said as he reminded Iri of what happened last month at her place. His best friend always had the tendency to jinx herself. Still, I just have a feeling that everything will turn out fine, Iri tried to reassure him. Besides, if something goes wrong, the pros will handle it. Kota rolled his eyes. I doubt it. I'm still coming up with an epic battle plan that will 100% guarantee our safety. Same here, Katsuma responded. Well then, while everyone here comes up with some epic battle plan in case villains break into the USJ, I'll be in my room finishing up my homework, Iri said as she headed towards the direction of her dorm room. Satsuki chuckled. Welp, I'm retiring for the night. Jensui-san wants me to help her prepare breakfast for everyone in the morning. Good night, you two. Good night, both Kota and Katsuma said as they continued on the conversation until the late hours of the night, trying to reassure each other that everything will be alright. There was only 1 week until Class 1 went to the USJ and Shinsu wasn't fucking around. He had a feeling that something bad was going to happen while he and his students were down there, so he had decided to host a mock-up battle at Ground B to test his students' strength and skills. Call him a mini Aizawa. But Shinsu just wanted to make sure his students were well prepared in case a villain tried to break into the USJ. Again, his class didn't know about the mock battles they will be doing tomorrow. That was a surprise. Shinsu had already sent the documents down to Hatsune the other day, requesting that the costumes were to be brought over to his class tomorrow afternoon. These mock battles will be a great way for his students to test out their costumes and allow them to see if it was to their liking. Shinsu walked around the corner and overheard 2 students bickering. Of course, it was both Izumi Kota and Atanko Tamashiro. From what Shinsu had read from their files, the two of them don't get along very well. That's going to have to change soon. Alright, you two, break it up, or else you both won't be able to participate in tomorrow's activity, Shinsu warned them both. Kota and Tamashiro quickly shot each other a dirty look before responding with yes, sensei. The 2 boys walked off while purposely bumping into each other like children. Shinsu heavily sighed. This was going to be a long and dreadful school year. Wait, there's going to be a mock battle today? Iri asked Katsuma as the duo walked through the door to their classroom. Katsuma nodded. Both Kota and Tamashiro found out before everyone else did. They did some snooping around and found a bunch of documents at his desk earlier this morning. Then the costumes arrived, so those 2 used their brains and figured out that Sensei was hosting a mock battle today for class. Honestly, with the crime rates increasing and the recent murders, I could see why Sensei wanted to host a mock battle, Iri said as she sat down at her desk. He's just trying to prepare us for the real world, and honestly I can't say I'd blame him. Katsuma heavily sighed as he looked over at the clock. Let's just hope today's lesson goes out well and that nobody gets hurt badly. Somehow I really doubt that, Iri responded in an unamused tone. She's heard plenty of stories from her dad about how risky these mock battles are and how many kids got sent to Recovery Girl during them. Students always have the tendency to go all out during them. Luckily, Sensei's been helping them out with their combat skills the past few days. So Iri's pretty confident that nothing too drastic is going to happen. Yeah, she probably just jinxed herself again. A few minutes later, Shinsu entered the room with a clipboard in his hand. Okay class, today we have 2 special guests coming in to take over this lesson for me while I catch up on some paper. Suddenly the door blows open behind Shinsu. I am casually walking through the door like any other normal human being would. It was the number 1 pro hero, Deku, who was copying All Might's way of saying things and damaging the front door with his quirk. Iri can already hear the verbal lashing Principal Todoroki is going to be giving him later. Everyone's eyes lit up as soon as he entered the room. Iri smiled, knowing that today's lesson would go out well. 𝐬𝐻𝐸 𝐍𝐸, on the other hand, was dreading this lesson already. Izuku smiled at the next generation of pro heroes. He recognized Eri, Katsuma, and Kota immediately out of everyone else until he spotted Razu in the back. Oh boy, he could already tell this was going to be one interesting lesson. Why hello class, I heard you guys would be doing your mock battles today. Everyone immediately shook their heads. Well, my friend Puppet Master here Shinsu interrupted him. We're not friends, Midoriya. Both you and 𝗀𝗀𝗏 volunteered to monitor this exam today while I did some catching up on some impending paperwork. Izuku scratched the back of his head. Right. Well, Mirio had an emergency to attend to today, so he isn't available to attend. Don't worry, Shinsu. I'll make sure to take good care of your students while you get your paperwork done. I highly doubt that, Shinsu responded in a deadpan tone. Izuku chuckled. Well, everyone, go grab your hero costumes off the shelves over there and go head over to Ground B and get ready. Everyone quickly rushed over to the shelves to grab their briefcase that contained their hero costumes. A lot had changed over the years with the production of gadgets and how the costumes function. Eri was excited to wear her hero costume for the first time, a mesh of Deku and Mirio's costumes with a little hint of herself. Eri was excited for this lesson to begin. Eri came out of the entranceway wearing her hero suit, white top with green and gold accents, dark blue pants, white shoes with green and gold accents, a pair of red gloves, and a red cape similar to Mirio's. She didn't request for any gadgets, but Eri thinks that she might put in a request for some gadgets that could help her defend herself after class. Now she could rely on her quirk for healing, but she needed some form of defense to protect herself with. Perhaps a staff or maybe a capturing scarf like Shinsu and her dad's. Either way, a weapon or some form of defense was at the top of her list for now. Eri saw Kota and Katsuma talking to each other, Satsuki having some sort of deep conversation with Tamashiro and Kanjo, and Kokoro and James having a very in-depth conversation with Deku. It looks like everyone had someone to talk to in her class. And then there's Eri, who is just standing in the back waiting for class to begin. Oh, you must be Eri Aizawa. A girl with short lavender hair spoke as she walked up beside Eri. She was wearing some sort of gas mask with goggles at the top, gloves that covered 2 of her fingers, and a costume that semi-resembled that of a white hazmat suit with dark purple accents to it. Eri nodded. Yes, I am. You must be 𝐬𝐻𝐸 𝐍𝐸. Razu smiled a bit from behind her mask. MHM. I remembered you scored higher than me on the quirk assessment test. Huh, I did. Eri looked at her with a confused expression on her face. The quirk assessment test. But that's been ages ago. How could she remember that far in the past? You did. Don't worry about it though, I'm not upset. It just means that I have to work harder in order to become stronger. Razu responded in a sincere tone. Why do you want to become stronger? To protect others, Eri asked her. Razu shrugged as she looked away. Something like that. Well, it was nice talking to you, Eri said in a cheerful tone. Razu nodded. It was nice talking to you too, Eri Aizawa. Eri walked off towards the direction where her friends were at. What did Razu truly mean by wanting to get stronger? Does she have an interior motive? Maybe she has a traj. Okay class. Today you guys are going to be split into groups of 2, hero and villain, for a 2-on-2 team battle. Right, now isn't the time to procrastinate. The mock battles are about to begin. The villains will guard a nuclear weapon they intend on deploying, and the heroes must stop their scheme. If the heroes capture the villains or reach the nuclear core before time runs out, they win. If the villains manage to keep the nuclear core for the whole time or they capture the heroes, they win, Izuku explained as he pointed to a machine beside him. This is the lottery machine. I will put my hand inside the hole and pull out a ball. The ball will have your role on it and you will head to that location. Here are the matchups. Group A, Tamashiro Atanko and Eri Aizawa. Group B, Razu 𝐍𝐸 and Miyako Utonium. Group C, Ikaku Sensa and James Blair. Group D, Kendrick Bradford and Kaika Tishi. Group E, Mizu Sosa and Hanmo Shokubutsu. Group F, Katsu Kurai and Tsuno Ikari. Group G, Kota Izumi and Takabashi Itsuhaku. Group H, Kase Hikori and Shiren Yuta. Group I, Yumero Kokoro and Satsuki Asui. Group J, Kanjo Kontororu and Shimano Katsuma. Nice. Katsuma grinned as he looked over at a nervous boy with black hair. We get to be partners. Oh boy, Kanjo muttered under his breath. We're doomed. Izuku continued. Here are today's matchups. Group A as the heroes versus Group B as the villains. Group J as the heroes versus Group I as the villains. Group G as the heroes versus Group D as the villains. Group E as the heroes versus Group F as the villains. Group H as the heroes versus Group C as the villains. Izuku nervously scratched the back of his head as he watched the group's reactions to their matchups. I'm not an expert in this whole teaching thing. That's more up Shinsu's alley. Oh well, I guess it's worth a shot. Group A and B, head to your building. Everyone else go to the observation building. Eri was internally groaning on the inside. She has to work alongside Tamashiro to defeat 2 villains. Impossible. They can hardly be in a room without being hostile towards each other. This was a disaster. Why did she think this was going to be a fun exercise? Why did she? Aizawa, you're spacing off again. Tamashiro spoke up as he tapped her on the shoulder. Focus on the objective at hand here and don't doze off on me. Eri rolled her eyes. Yeah, I know. She knew she had to keep it civil. In the real world, you have to work alongside people you don't like, especially when it comes to heroics. All she had to do was get through this one exercise, and then she wouldn't have to speak to Tamashiro again. Yeah, this was going to be a walk in the park. Tamashiro continued. I got a plan on how to defeat the villains. I'm only going to repeat it once, okay? Eri nodded. Both Razu and Miyako have touch-base activation quirks, judging by the type of gear they have on their wrists. From what I've heard, they're also both pretty intelligent too. I see, Eri responded. So what's the plan? You're going to be the distraction while I go in from behind through a window and touch the bomb. Tamashiro explained. Simple, easy, and quick. Wow, you're actually good at forming plans, Eri complimented. Tamashiro's always been a quick thinker. Why did this surprise her? I've had some practice over the years, Tamashiro said before glancing up at the building in front of them. It's time. Eri nodded. Yep. Remember the plan? Tamashiro asked her. Yep, I'm ready, Eri responded. Good, it's go time, Tamashiro exclaimed. Eri excitedly grinned. It's time to go beyond plus ultra. Look at those miserable fools down there. They think they can come out with a plan to outsmart us, Razu said in the most villainous tone she could muster. Miyako frantically nodded, her face turning red at hearing her partner talk so villainously. If Razu was an actual villain, then she'd be dead meat. How could anyone not swoon over her alluring voice? Utonium, stop spacing out. Aizawa's coming in, Razu shouted as she quickly undid her gloves. Guard the bomb. Okay, Miyako responded as she used her quirk to encase the bomb in a large bubble. I will. It's time to go plus ultra on these motherfuckers. Razu grinned as she dashed down the hallway towards Eri. All right, Miyako chirped before glancing over at the bomb nervously. God, I haven't done this in such a long time. Please end the activity early. Please end the activity early. Sorry, Blondie, but the activity isn't ending early right away, a familiar voice shouted as Miyako quickly turned around. How the hell did he get up here so fast? Miyako slapped herself in the face. This was no time to think. She had to act now. She can't afford to lose this match. Tamashiro grinned. She was hesitating. Perfect. I'm sorry about doing this to you, Miyako shouted out as she reached over and touched a few nearby crates. But I can't afford to lose this match. Neither can I, Tamashiro responded back as he activated his quirk. Prepare to go down in style. Kaya, Miyako screamed as a binging ball was heading directly towards her. Tamashiro Atenko quirk. Binging balls. This quirk allows the user to create small, floating black orbs with shark-like mouths. The balls have sharp teeth and can eat through substances, such as ice, at high speeds. Miyako Utonium quirk, bubble. This quirk allows its user to trap anything they touch inside of a bubble. The user can also manipulate the direction of the bubble. Kaya, Razu heard Miyako scream from upstairs. How did one of them manage to get past her? Was it through a window? Impossible. Then again, Tamashiro does have a quirk that he can manipulate to glide on top of. It would make sense for him to use Aizawa-chan as a distraction and head straight for the bomb. Nevertheless, Razu is pretty confident with Miyako's ability to protect the bomb. She has experience dealing with these sort of things. Razu could tell just by how adept she is in class. Miyako wasn't ranked number 1 in their whole class for nothing. She's got this. All Razu has to do now is take out Eri Aizawa, which should be simple enough. The girl's a natural-born klutz, not to mention she's slightly airheaded and dozes off a lot. She'll be easy to defeat. But if there's anything Razu has learned from her years out on the street, it's that she shouldn't underestimate her opponent too quickly. Eri quickly ran into the building and started purposely smacking any surface she could in order to alert somebody. She was the distraction. Her main objective was to cause as much ruckus as she could so that Tamashiro could secure the bomb for their team. It was a relatively simple plan in both thought and execution. Or was it? Before Eri could react, the floor above her suddenly caved in and bits and pieces of dust landed near her. Coughing and stumbling back, Eri looked up and noticed Razu standing right in front of her. Shit. She can decay things with her quirk. This was bad. This was so bad. Hello there, hero. Prepare to meet your demise. Razu Gensui quirk. Decay. This quirk allows the user to disintegrate whatever they touches with all 5 fingers on their hand. Razu lunged at Eri with her exposed left hand reaching towards her costume, the other grabbing a set of handcuffs. Eri dodged and ran far away as she could. How could she possibly detain someone without any method of capturing them? God, why am I such an idiot? Eri thought as she ran for her life. I have to come up with a plan quickly or else she'll gain up on me. I can't let my teammate down. Eri came to a sudden stop. She had to face her opponent head on. There was no other option. Razu lunged directly at Eri, punching the girl in the face as she attempts to restrain her. Eri used her free leg to kick Razu in the shin, freeing herself quickly before landing another blow onto her side. Coughing up phlegm, 𝐍𝐸 quickly gained her senses and kicked 𝐸𝐸 in the jaw. Stumbling back and rubbing her aching jaw, 𝐸𝐸 charged directly at 𝐍𝐸 and proceeded to land a series of attacks on her. 𝐍𝐸 evaded most of the attacks with relative ease, using her flexibility to her advantage and landing a critical hit on 𝐸𝐸. 𝐸𝐸 gritted her teeth. She refused to lose this match. Clutching her right hand tightly, 𝐸𝐸 punched 𝐍𝐸 directly in the nose. 𝐍𝐸 gasped in shock as blood began to leak out. Did she just break her nose? Well, I didn't want to do this, but I'm afraid I have no choice, 𝐍𝐸 shouted as she reached her exposed hand to the floor. Suddenly the ground began to rapidly crumble underneath them. As 𝐸𝐸 was about to jump out of the way, 𝐍𝐸 used her gloved hand to forcefully drag the teen down with her. Screaming, 𝐸𝐸 fell through the floor alongside 𝐍𝐸 and landed in a pile of rocky debris. Heavily panting and bloodied, 𝐍𝐸 slowly got up and walked over towards where 𝐸𝐸 was at. This was it. Her time to finally prove to herself that she is stronger than her arch-nemesis, Momoko. 𝐸𝐸 quickly looked around and noticed 𝐍𝐸's capturing tape laying right beside her. Before she could reach for it, 𝐍𝐸 immediately stepped on her left arm. I'm afraid I cannot let you win, 𝐍𝐸 said as she looked down at 𝐸𝐸. Both of them winced as they heard 𝐸𝐸's bone crack, 𝐸𝐸 screaming out in pain as 𝐍𝐸 continued to apply more pressure to it. I'm deeply sorry for this, 𝐍𝐸 said as she used her gloved hand to pick up the handcuffs, but I need to win. This, Ms. Jensui, stop this. You're hurting her. The duo heard Izuku said through the loudspeaker. 𝐍𝐸 quickly let off from 𝐸𝐸's hand, starting down at the damage she had caused. Perhaps she had gone a bit too hard on the girl. Tears began welling up in Rosa's eyes. This wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want to become just like Momoko, hurting others for the sake of her own selfish ideals. She wanted to become a hero worthy of protecting those in need. Using the handcuffs, 𝐍𝐸 hooked them onto her arm with her gloved hand. 𝐸𝐸 looked up at her in shock. Did she just forfeit? Gasps could be heard from the intercom. Why would 𝐍𝐸 suddenly forfeit from the battle? She was so close to winning. This didn't make any sense. When I chose to surrender myself to the authorities, I made a promise to myself that I would become a hero worthy enough to save and protect those in need. I didn't want to make the same mistakes I made while out on the streets. Consider this a draw, Aizawa 𝐸𝐸, 𝐍𝐸 said in a shaky tone. Get some damn medical robots over here already. Please. 𝐸𝐸 managed to get out. She was in so much pain right now. Don't worry, I'm coming. 𝐸𝐸 could hear Katsuma's voice from over the intercom. Hang on. But 𝐸𝐸 couldn't. She was in so much pain. As she could hear footsteps quickly approaching them, 𝐸𝐸's vision immediately blackened out. Miyako screamed as she dodged yet another one of Tamashiro's attacks. Was this guy trying to kill her? Have the roles been reversed? Tamashiro grinned, summoning another round of binging balls to throw at her. Miyako shrieked, barely dodging as she pulled out her metal staff from her belt. It's a good thing she requested a weapon for her costume. Her skirt flowed in the wind of the attack, her baby blue boots clunking against the concrete floor as she dodged yet another attack. Miyako heavily panted, her baby blue bomber jacket hanging loosely off her shoulders and her mid-length blonde hair disheveled. She was gripping on tightly to her weapon, sweating nervously as Tamashiro started to walk closer towards her. Tamashiro looked at his opponent and laughed. So the supposed strongest in his class has been reduced to a mess. Pathetic. Summoning another binging ball, Tamashiro threw it at Miyako's face. Miyako shrieked, using her staff to reflect Tamashiro's attack and sending it directly back at him. Tamashiro dodged, glaring at the blonde-haired girl right in front of him. Shit, she knows how to deflect my attacks. Miyako looked at the sight. Did she just reflect his attack? Wait, that gives her an idea. Activating her quirk, Miyako quickly ran and started rapidly touching as much rubble as she could with her fingers. She was not about to lose this match, especially to a savage like Tamashiro. Tamashiro watched as all the nearby rubble got encased in bubbles, slowly floating up in the sky as Miyako kept going. What the hell was she doing? Miyako grinned, coming to a stop and standing directly in front of Tamashiro. If he was going to go all out, then why can't she? After all, she can't afford to disappoint her teammate. I'm terribly sorry, Tamashiro, but I'm not about to lose this fucking match, Miyako said as she touched her fingertips together. Rain of debris. Suddenly rubble started to come down on Tamashiro. Tamashiro attempted to quickly evade the attack but ended up getting caught by a large piece of rubble, pinning him to the ground. Quickly he was buried in the debris, Miyako staring at the sight in shock. Did I just win? Tamashiro gritted his teeth, activating his quirk and summoning a large binging ball to devour the pile, pinning him down. Miyako gulped, clutching onto her staff tightly as she watched a bloodied Tamashiro slowly get up. Sorry, Blondie, but I can't afford to lose this damn match either, Tamashiro exclaimed as the large binging ball came directly at her. Miyako screamed, jumping out of the way and tumbling onto the ground. She can't afford to get hit by one of those things. There has to be a way to effectively immobilize Tamashiro. Looking up, Miyako noticed that the bomb was still intact inside a bubble. This was it. Now was her chance. Tamashiro stumbled over, gripping on tightly to his bloodied side with his left hand as he reached out his hand towards Miyako. Muttering a few apologies under her breath, Miyako activated her quirk and dropped the bomb directly on top of Tamashiro. Miyako's eyes widened as she heard her opponent scream, the bomb being reduced to nothing but clumps of metal. Did she win? Did she actually win? Using her staff and poking Tamashiro's exposed hand, Miyako quickly determined that her opponent was unconscious. Slowly getting up, Miyako walked over and crouched down beside Tamashiro, grabbing a first aid kit from her belt and attending to his wounds. She could hear Deku announcing her team's victory over the loudspeaker, but that didn't matter to Miyako. She won, but at what cost? Encasing her unconscious classmate inside a bubble, Miyako and the bubble slowly made their way downstairs and over towards the medical bots. There laid both 𝐸𝐸 and 𝐸𝐸𝐬's bodies, the duo unconscious and heavily wounded. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 was attending to their wounds with his quirk, sweat pouring down on his face. I'll take over for you, Shimano-kun, Miyako said as she gently placed the bubble on top of the stretcher, deactivating her quirk instantly as soon as Tamashiro's skin came in contact with the fabric. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 hesitantly smiled. Are you sure? Miyako nodded. Don't worry, I have experience in treating injuries. Go back up to the observation building and rest. Your match is going to start soon. Thanks, Utonium-san. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 responded as he rushed off towards the observation building. Miyako smiled back. No problem. Now, these are going to be some serious wounds to treat. Oh boy, what did I get myself into now? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 had no idea how he was going to defeat Team I. While he is familiar with how his classmates' quirks work, he is still heavily lacking in the strength department compared to both Kokoro and Satsuki. Despite that, he still has his brains and speed to make up for it. He can't exactly say the same for Kanjo though, the Zenitsu preferring to stay in the shadows and avoid direct confrontation. Kanjo was a strategist, someone who plans before acting. Quite the perfect contrast to himself, as he likes to act before thinking. Kanjo stood beside 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 with his rifle in hand and a serious expression on his face. Speaking of which, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 has never seen his quirk in action. Could it possibly be related to the weapons he's been using during practice? Shimano-kun. Huh? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 snapped out of his thoughts, turning his head over to look Kanjo in the eyes. You spaced out there for a moment, Kanjo said as he adjusted his visor. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 nervously rubbed the back of his head. Sorry, I have the tendency to do that every once in a while. Kanjo nodded as he activated his visor to nocturnal mode. It's fine. Hey, what exactly is your quirk? My quirk. It's cell activation, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 responded. Why do you ask? Just curious is all. Kanjo shrugged. Say, by any chance do you know what Yumero-kun and Asui-chan's quirks are? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 thought back to a previous conversation he had with Satsuki yesterday. My quirk? Satsuki asked him. You want to know about my quirk? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 nodded. Alright, it's actually quite similar to my sister's, except for the whole tongue extension part. What differentiates our quirks is that I'm more agile and flexible than Tsu, Satsuki explained. Hence why I was able to beat you in our climbing exercise back at the gym. Wow, your quirk is so cool, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 exclaimed. Satsuki blushed, rubbing her fingers together nervously. Thanks, your compliment means a lot to me. Most people would be rude and discriminate against me for being a mutant, but you and everyone else here have been nothing but nice. It's weird. Yeah, I can get where you're coming from. I used to get picked on pretty badly back on Nabu Island for wanting to become a hero. The only people who supported my dreams were my dad and my older sister. Everyone else just belittled me for chasing after an impossible dream and not having a quirk suitable for heroics, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 said as he pumped his fist up into the air. But I'm going to prove them wrong. I'll prove to everyone that healing quirks are just as suitable for heroics as flashy ones. Satsuki chuckled. Well, I wish you the best of luck on your dream, Shimano-kun. Same here, Asui-chan. I'm not sure on what Kokoro-kun's quirk is, but I know Asui-chan's gives her frog-like abilities, 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 said as both he and Kanjo entered the building. Why do you ask? Just seeing if it would be more appropriate to attack them from the shadows or go for a more direct approach, Kanjo responded. But it seems I'm going to be providing support for this battle. Alright, so you want me to lead one of them over towards you? 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 asked him. Kanjo nodded as he loaded his rifle. Oh, don't worry about my rifle. It's actually a BB gun Ms. Hatsum designed for me. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 nervously laughed as he ran away from his teammate. Kanjo surely was one strange guy. He'd hate to get on the Blockhead's bad side. The battle had already begun. 𝐬𝐡𝐚𝐭 hid nearby a staircase with a hand on the case of his dagger. He needed to find either Satsuki or Yumero-kun and detain them in order to win the match. He's already feeling slightly exhausted from using his quirk on both 𝐸𝐸 and Tamashiro, but regardless he was still going to try his hardest to win this match. Kokoro carefully walked down the staircase, his bow in hand already loaded with an arrow. He was beyond nervous for this exercise. Sure, he has experience with shooting targets, but what he's lacking in is combat experience. How he, Eri, and James managed to take down 𝐸𝐸𝐿 during the entrance exams without getting too badly injured still surprises 𝗂𝐀. All he did was provide bow support. Eri and James handled most of the direct combat. The only reason they won was because he managed to actually hit 𝐸𝐸𝐿 while he was distracted with monologue. If he had to actually engage in physical combat back there, then he would have most likely failed the exam. Physical combat isn't his forte. He prefers to stay back and provide support from afar. 𝗂𝐀 knows he's going to have to stray out of his comfort zone in the future. For now, though, he's going to stick to what he's comfortable with. But would that be enough to help him win this battle? 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 heard somebody walk down the staircase, his hands still clutching onto the case of his dagger. By the shape of the shadow illuminated from the glass window, he assumes it's Satsuki's partner, 𝗂𝐀 Ymero, holding some sort of loaded weapon in his hands. Withdrawing his knife, 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 quickly shot out from his hiding place and lunged at 𝗂𝐀. 𝗂𝐀 shrieked, releasing his arrow as he dodged 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭's attack. The arrow hit 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 in the shoulder, making him stumble back a bit. Suddenly overwhelmed with fear, 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭's body started shaking as he slowly backed away from 𝗂𝐀. His mind was trying to process the scene right in front of him. He was going up against someone who has a literal bow and arrow as a weapon ready to attack him at any moment. How was he supposed to win this? 𝗂𝐀 nervously shook as he loaded up another arrow, ready to fire at 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 just in case his quirk loses its effect. As 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 slowly began to gain back his bearings, 𝗂𝐀 immediately fired another arrow at the brunette. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 narrowly avoided it, watching as the arrow hit up against the wall and evaporated. So his quirk is based around controlling one's emotions. This sure is going to be a challenging fight, 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 thought as he gripped onto his knife tightly. I'll just have to make sure that he doesn't hit me with his arrows. That shouldn't be hard, right? Ymero 𝗂𝐀 quirk. Mood arrow. The user can take the emotions from others or himself and turn them into arrows, shooting his opponents to make them feel whatever emotion he desires them to feel. Satsuki screamed as another bullet hit the wall right beside her, dodging and weaving any oncoming attacks while trying to locate where her opponent was. She had expected to go up against someone like 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭, who used mainly brute strength to fight his opponents, not a freaking trained sniper. How the heck was she going to land a hit on 𝐾𝐦 if she doesn't even know where he's at? 𝐾𝐦 reloaded his gun quickly, dashing over to a nearby pillar and firing another shot at Satsuki. The bullet missed her, hitting a nearby pillar as the brunette continued running. As much as he preferred a challenge, 𝐾𝐦 didn't want to injure his classmate in any way. He needed to immobilize Satsuki now before she finds out his location. 𝐾𝐦 wasn't about to risk losing this match and embarrassing himself in front of his whole class. He just couldn't. Reloading his gun, 𝐾𝐦 looked through the lens of his rifle and watched his target move for a few seconds before firing. Satsuki gasped, tumbling over after a bullet hit her in the side. 𝐾𝐦 quickly fired more rounds at her, shooting her in the legs so that she wouldn't be able to effectively use her quirk. Satsuki yelped, rubbing her legs as the bullets landed on the ground beside her. He's using a BB gun on me. What the hell? This shit hurts. 𝐾𝐦 stopped firing for a few seconds, placing his rifle back in its holster and grabbing the capturing tape. It's now or never. Dashing out from his hiding place, 𝐾𝐦 lunged at Satsuki and quickly wrapped her in capturing tape. Satsuki tried to fight him off but couldn't due to the throbbing pain in her side and legs. 𝐾𝐦 smiled as he finished tying up Satsuki. You put up a good fight. Satsuki hesitantly smiled back. You did too. Those bullets hurt like a bitch though. How are you so good at shooting? 𝐾𝐦 shrugged. Just practice, I guess. I wonder how 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 and Ymero-kun are doing. Satsuki asked as she flinched at the sound of 𝗂𝐀 screaming. 𝐾𝐦 looked up at the floor above him. I guess we're about to find out. 𝗂𝐀 screamed as 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 knocked his weapon out from his hands, sending a right hook to his jaw with his fist. 𝗂𝐀 hesitantly punched 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 back, slowly backing away as the brunette sent a kick his way. Ducking, 𝗂𝐀 quickly made his way towards his bow in an attempt to gain an advantage. 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 noticed this, throwing his knife at 𝗂𝐀 in an attempt to discourage him. The blade landed right in front of 𝗂𝐀, the brunette screaming in horror as he activated his quirk to send an arrow towards 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭. 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭 dodged, grabbing another knife from his holster and throwing it at 𝗂𝐀. 𝗂𝐀 jumped out of the way, his body rolling on the ground for a few seconds before getting up. 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭 quickly rushed over towards him, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with the brunette for a few seconds before sending a quick punch to his face. 𝗂𝐀 quickly regained his bearings, sending a harsh punch to 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭's stomach before kicking the brunette away. Panting, 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭 activated his quirk and quickly healed his wounds before charging at 𝗂𝐀 and kicking him in the shin. Shimano 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭 quirk. Cell activation. His quirk allows him to speed up the activity of cells in the body of anyone he touches. 𝗀𝐡𝐚𝐭 can also use his quirk on himself as well. The quirk can be used to heal a person's wounds as well as improve their physical performance. After prolonged usage, 𝐻𝐡𝐚𝐭 can suffer from exhaustion. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 fell down, his hands clutching onto his shin as 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 quickly wrapped him up in capturing tape. This match's victory goes to Team J. 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 smiled, raising his arm up in victory. He did it. Yes, Kanjo and a worn-out Satsuki rushed up the steps, looking at the sight before them as they saw 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 celebrating his victory and 𝗂𝐻𝐻 rolling around in pain. 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭, I think Yumero-kun needs medical attention, Satsuki pointed out. 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 gasped, quickly activating his quirk and healing 𝗂𝐻𝐻. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 hesitantly chuckled. It's fine. You all put up quite a fight, Kanjo said as he looked over at Satsuki. I haven't had a fight this exciting since my aunt challenged me to a duel. How the hell did you even manage to shoot that thing anyways? It looks super complicated, Satsuki asked as she pointed to the rifle on Kanjo's back. My aunt taught me how to shoot guns before she went rogue and got imprisoned. She and my mom wanted to make sure I could defend myself against criminals, Kanjo responded. After all, quirkless people are easy targets. Wait, you're quirkless, 𝗂𝐻𝐻 exclaimed, pointing a finger at Kanjo. Kanjo nodded as he walked over and helped 𝗂𝐻𝐻 up. Didn't you all notice my shoes? All quirkless people wear red sneakers, unless you're Mizu and wear boots made up of animal skin. Sorry, I don't really pay attention to what people wear on their feet, 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 said. Though I think it's cool that you're able to fight even without a quirk. Thanks guys, Kanjo responded before looking over at Satsuki clutching her side in pain. But I think we should get Satsuki to the med robots. We don't want Shimano-kun to pass out from quirk exhaustion due to healing everyone. Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea, 𝐻𝐻𝐚𝐭 said as he helped Satsuki walk. A very good idea indeed. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 was extremely pumped. It was now his turn to go up and show everyone what he's capable of. He especially wanted to show Tamashiro and Eri how to properly win a match. Grinning, 𝗂𝐻𝐻 looked up at the building and started to formulate a plan. He was going to win this match for sure and shove it in both his classmates' faces. You shouldn't get too overconfident, Takabashi said as they stood beside 𝗂𝐻𝐻, or else your pride will overshadow your judgment. I highly doubt that my pride will end up overclouding my judgment, 𝗂𝐻𝐻 said in a reassuring tone as he shrugged off what Takabashi previously said. Takabashi heavily sighed as both they and 𝗂𝐻𝐻 entered the building. How did they get stuck with such an arrogant asshole? Just my luck, Takabashi muttered under their breath. As the horn went off for the match to begin, a pair of hands shot up from the ground and immediately grabbed both Takabashi and 𝗂𝐻𝐻's ankles. More hands began to sprung out from the arm, not stopping until both 𝗂𝐻𝐻 and Takabashi were trapped in a net. 𝐾𝐻𝐦 walked out from behind a pillar, both arms crossed in an X pattern as she used her quirk to tighten the net. Takabashi groaned out in pain alongside 𝗂𝐻𝐻, both of them put in comfortable positions due to the tightness of the net. 𝐾𝐻𝐦 quirk, blossoming limbs. This quirk gives the user the ability to sprout any part of their body onto any surface or person. This quirk can also be used both offensively and defensively. Any damage caused to the body part will be transferred back to the user. And the winner of this match goes to Team D. Well, that was easy, 𝗀𝐻𝐻 said as she heard the horn go off. Took me only 5 seconds to detain you both, not too shabby. Were you waiting on us the whole time? 𝗂𝐻𝐻 asked her. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 chuckled. I figured you both would charge in head first, so I decided to ambush you both. Could you please release us? This position isn't very comfortable, Takabashi said as they groaned out in pain. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 nodded as she deactivated her quirk. My bad. I hope you both won't hold this against me. Both Takabashi and 𝗂𝐻𝐻 slowly got up off the ground, cracking their backs as they do so. Kendrick quickly came running down the steps, looking at the scene in shock as 𝗀𝐻𝐻 gave him a thumbs up. How? Kendrick asked her. 𝗀𝐻𝐻 just simply smiled. Magic. 𝗂𝐻𝐻 rolled his eyes at her comment. Yeah, magic. Let's head back up to the observation tower, Takabashi said as the others nodded. Yeah, 𝗂𝐻𝐻 said in a defeated tone. Let's. Hey Hanmo, Mizu said as she walked into the building alongside her teammate. How exactly are we going to take the villains out? Hanmo smiled as she dug into her pocket and pulled out a singular seed. Oh, it's quite simple, dear Mizu. I'm going to incapacitate them. But how? Mizu asked her. Hanmo threw the seed down onto the floor as the horn went off in the distance. Instantly, large plants began to appear out from the seed, rapidly taking over the building and covering it in thick vines and roots. Hanmo Shokubutsu quirk. Chlorokinesis. This quirk allows the user to mentally or physically summon, control, and manipulate plants and vegetation. Suno instantly noticed a vine coming directly towards him, quickly turning into his half-Pachycephalosaurus form and jumping out of the way. Katsu quickly activated her quirk and made a portal leading to the lower level of the building, jumping through it and closing it behind her. I'll go upstairs and secure the bomb, Mizu said as she pulled out her staff. Keep an eye out for one of the villains. Hi, Hanmo responded as she watched her teammate hike up the vine. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 quickly ran down the hallway as plants started to grow out from the vines. One of her opponents had a powerful plant-related quirk. 𝐀𝐦 was it. Regardless, her opponent needed to be quickly dealt with, and what better way to do that than to launch a surprise attack. Moving quickly on her feet, 𝐻𝐡𝐢 opened up a portal directly in front of her and dived in, landing directly behind Hanmo 𝐀𝐦. Quickly reaching for her cuffs, 𝐻𝐡𝐢 attempted to detain Hanmo only to get slapped on the chest with a vine. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 Kurai quirk. Portal. This user gives the ability to open portals to any desired location so long as they have an image in mind. Did you think I would be that stupid to let my guard down? Hanmo said as she pulled back her vine, plants growing directly underneath where she stood. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 tumbled back a bit from the impact, quickly getting up and getting into a battle stance. Well, it sure was worth a shot. Hanmo shrugged. I suppose I'll give you some credit. Vines spouted out from beneath Hanmo, heading directly towards 𝐻𝐡𝐢's location. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 quickly opened up a portal and dove straight in, appearing quickly behind Hanmo and attempted to jump her again. Hanmo quickly wrapped her in vines, gently placing 𝐻𝐡𝐢's body on the ground as the vines tightened up slightly. Hanmo gave 𝐻𝐡𝐢 a look of pity. At least you tried your hardest. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 chuckled as she felt the restraints around her tightened. Oh well, better luck next time. Hanmo chuckled. How are you so good at fighting anyways? Like, isn't this type of restraint similar to what Deku uses to capture villains? 𝐻𝐡𝐢 asked her. Hanmo smiled. Yeah, it is. 𝐻𝐡𝐢 nodded. That's pretty cool. Is he your favorite pro hero? Yeah, he is, Hanmo said as she remembered the time he saved her from life out on the streets. The young Hanmo quickly fled down a nearby alleyway with a bag of food in her hand. She was so relieved that she wouldn't have to worry about starving for a while. Even if her quirk could grow plants, it still wasn't enough to sustain her long term. Before she could make a turn, someone used their quirk to stop her in place. What do you think you're doing with that stolen bag of goods? A man asked her as Hanmo shakily turned around. It isn't good to steal, you know. Hanmo was stunned. How could she have been so foolish to get caught by a pro hero, especially the #1 hero Deku? I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to. Deku knew that she didn't mean to steal that bag of food. Judging by her disheveled look, he knew the young child was just doing what she could to survive out on the streets. Luckily enough for her, he knew just the place where she could go to get some warm food and a place to rest. Deactivating Black Whip, Deku slowly sat the child down on the ground and bent down to her level. Hey, how about we return that bag of food and you come with me back to UA? I promise you there will be lots of food there for you to eat and a nice warm bed to sleep in. How does that sound? Hanmo's eyes widened. She could finally have a place to live and food to eat. No more abandoned buildings and stealing food to survive. That's sure, Hanmo responded as she smiled slightly. I'd like that. Kaya, Mizu screamed as Tsuno lunged at her in his half-Pachycephalosaurus form, instantly hitting the wall right behind her. Tsuno Ikari quirk. Pachycephalosaurus. This quirk allows the user to transform into a Pachycephalosaurus and give them the same abilities as one. They can also transform into a hybrid form. She had finally made it to the top floor of the building after climbing up several tall vines, only to get ambushed by Tsuno as she entered the room where the bomb was located. He was quick, fast, and agile while she was slow, nervous, and exhausted from climbing. How on earth was she going to win this fight? Wait, Cotton, Mizu shouted before Tsuno knocked her to the ground with his foot, a wild cloud-like apparition appearing right above her. Quickly getting up and grabbing her staff, Mizu called upon Cotton's power as the apparition transformed itself into a thundercloud, hovering over top Tsuno. Lightning blast. A surge of lightning instantly hit Tsuno's body, electrifying him for a few seconds before stopping. His body would collapse onto the floor, breathing heavily as he's covered in burn marks. This match's victory goes to Team E. Wait, we won. Mizu looked around in shock, Cotton making its way back into her staff. Oh my god, I can't believe it. After what seemed like a long and exhausting battle, Mizu and her teammate finally made it on top and passed the test. Now she can go back to her dorm and relax in her room. Oh shit, Mizu exclaimed as she slapped her hands on her cheeks. We're going to need a medic up here. Well, maybe after school she could. The final match ended with Team H taking on the victory after both Ikaku and James were immobilized due to Yuta's quirk. Kota and Katsuma had taken the rest of the afternoon off to visit their friend Eri in the hospital wing. As soon as they entered the room, Eri immediately smiled at their presence. So, I heard Kota lost his match. Kota groaned in embarrassment. Who told you that? Tsuno's head perked up from his hospital bed and waved at the duo. Kota glared at him. Rat. Eri snickered. You'd be surprised at what being stuck here all day does to a person. Razu rolled her eyes as Tamashiro chuckled. Tsuno laughed. It was a great bonding experience. When you don't get crushed by fucking rubble, that is, Tamashiro added on as Razu chuckled. Or brutally beating your opponent up. Tsuno shook his head. Noted. Anyways, the nurse said that I should be discharged tomorrow afternoon. I don't know about everyone else here, but I say we should all go out for some ice cream, 𝐸𝐻 said in an excited tone, to treat ourselves. Katsuma smiled. I'm down for that. What about you, Kota? Kota shrugged. Anything to get away from the dorms. Being teased for going down so easily alongside James, Takabashi, and Akaku is just tiresome. Don't worry, they'll forget about it by tomorrow, Razu said in a reassuring tone. Mind if I come? I haven't gotten the chance to properly tour the area before being sent here. Sure, 𝐸𝐻 responded in a cheerful tone. Anyone else? I'll pass. Tamashiro spoke up. Not in the mood to put up with people right now. Typical, Kota retorted. Tamashiro's eye twitched as Kota rolled his. I think I'll stay back too, Tsuno said as he got up from his bed. I need to train more if I'm going to even beat Mizu and her weird-ass cloud thingy in combat. 𝐸𝐻 nodded. Alrighty. Oh hey guys, is it okay if James and Kokoro could come along? Katsuma nodded. Sure. Kota shrugged. Doesn't matter to me. Alright, that sounds like a plan to me, Razu said before looking over at Tamashiro and smirking. You sure you don't want to come? Tamashiro raised an eyebrow at the mention of Kokoro possibly coming along. Might as well. What happened to you not being in the mood to deal with people? Kota asked as Tamashiro scowled at him. I changed my mind. Now are we going to do this tomorrow or not? We are, 𝐸𝐻 responded in a cheerful tone. And we're all going to have a fun time, I guarantee it. If only she knew what was about to come next. To say that Class 1A wasn't nervous about their upcoming field trip would be a complete lie. They were afraid of being targeted by a bunch of villains, or in 𝐸𝐻's case, being taken away and potentially killed. They've all heard the stories surrounding the past Class 1A and their frequent run-ins with the now-defunct League of Villains. How they had to fight in order to survive and having to become pro-heroes at an extremely young age. As much as 𝐸𝐻 would enjoy being a pro-hero right now, her fight with Razu proved that she is going to need to train harder. 𝐸𝐻 sighed as she leaned back in her chair, frowning. She looked over at the clock and at the empty podium in front of the classroom. It was a little bit past 8. The bell had already rung and their sensei wasn't here yet. That wasn't really odd, but still quite unusual nonetheless. 10 minutes have passed and everyone had already taken their seats. 𝐸𝐻 frowned. Something had to be up. Their sensei normally wasn't this late to class. Before she could think of a possible reason for Shinsu to be late, the classroom door opened up. Walking into their classroom was 𝐸𝐻's dad, 𝐬𝐡𝐻 𝐸𝐻 and Kota's faces immediately paled. Katsuma and Kokoro looking at the duo with a concerned look on their faces. Razu placed her elbows on her desk, resting her chin on her hands. So the retired pro-hero finally makes a return to the classroom. This sure will be interesting. Alright kids, I'm going to be doing roll call now, 𝐈𝐻 said as he looked down at his clipboard. Yumeru Kokoro. Here, Kokoro shouted. Mizu Sosa. Mizu raised her hand. Here. Satsuki Asui. Present. Satsuki responded in a calm tone. Kanjo Kantaroru. Kanjo raised his hand up in the air. Here. Miyako Utonium. I'm here, Miyako cheerfully said as her hand shot up in the air. 𝐸𝐻 𝐈𝐻 slowly raised her hand. Here. Kota Izumi. Here. Kota said as he lazily raised his hand up in the air. Hanmo Shokubutsu. Here. Hanmo said as lavender buds sprouted from her hair. Takabashi Itsuhaku. Here. Takabashi said as they messed with a sphere of water they created earlier with their quirk. Tamashiro Itenko. Here. Tamashiro shouted as he raised his fist up in the air. Razu Gensui. Razu looked at him with a stern expression on her face. Present. James Blair. Here. James said enthusiastically. Kendrick Bradford. Kendrick smiled. Here. Shimano Katsuma. Katsuma nodded. Here. Kaika Tishi. A hand would sprout up from Kokoro's head, freaking the teen out. Kaika smiled. Here. 𝐈𝐻 sighed. Ms. Tishi, please stop tormenting your classmate with your quirk. Kaika nodded as she deactivated her quirk, petals landing all over Kokoro's hair and desk. Alright. Now where was I? 𝐈𝐻 looked down at his clipboard again. Katsukurai. Present. Tsuno Ikari. Tsuno shouted at the top of his lungs. Here. 𝐀𝐦 𝐍𝐴. Here. Shrine Yuta. Present. Yuta said in a sing-song voice. Ikaku Sensa. Here. 𝐈𝐻 sat the clipboard down on his podium as he looked down at the class. It seems I forgot to introduce myself. My name is 𝐬𝐻 and I'm going to be your substitute teacher for the time being. 𝐸𝐻 could hear her classmates whisper amongst themselves. Is that 𝐈𝐻-chan's dad? I think so, but they look nothing alike. SHH. They can hear us. 𝐸𝐻 and Kota looked at each other. They were both royally fucked. Her classmates may not know this, but this was the man who taught the former Class 1A. The fucking top 3 pro heroes. Despite being retired from hero work, her dad was an absolute menace that should not be messed with. He could easily take on the entirety of her class right now and win just by using his capturing scarf. Kota learned that the hard way. He once challenged her dad to a duel and lost within the first 5 seconds. All because he wanted to prove that he could take down the former underground pro hero. Needless to say, Kota is still traumatized from that day. Katsuma looked at his friends with a confused look on his face. He didn't know why both Iri and Kota were nervous. Aizawa coughed into his fist. The classroom immediately fell silent. Anyways, I bet you guys are wondering where your sensei is. He's going to be away on a mission for the next couple of days. So he asked me personally to take over for the time being. Razu shot up her hand. Sir, what about our upcoming field trip? Aizawa responded. You will all still be going on your field trip to the USJ tomorrow. The only thing that's going to change would be the presence of an additional pro hero, in case something bad would happen. I'm sure you guys have heard of 𝐴𝐸. Iri's eyes lit up. Mirio-kun's going to be there. James and Kokoro's faces immediately paled. They both hoped they wouldn't have to go up against 𝐴𝐸 again. One time was more than enough for the two of them. Aizawa continued. He will be there to help supervise your field trip. I expect you all to be on your best behavior while we're there. Yes, sir. The whole class responded. Aizawa nodded. Good. Now let's get started with your homework from last night. Oh my god. I can't believe we get to go on our field trip tomorrow with Mirio-kun. Iri excitedly said as she walked beside Kota and Katsuma. I'm so hyped. Katsuma was confused on why Iri got excited as soon as the pro hero 𝐴𝐸's name was mentioned. Could the duo possibly have a connection? Or is Iri just a big fan of him? She and Mirio are really tight. Kota spoke as Iri walked off rambling about the upcoming field trip. He saved her when she was younger and nearly lost his life during the process. She considers him to be her older brother. Oh, Katsuma nodded, kind of like how you and I are big fans of Deku. Kota nodded, yep. Of course our bonds with the pro hero isn't nearly as strong as the one Iri has with Mirio. The two of them are like peas in a pod when they're around each other. Kind of like you and Iri during our first week here at UA. Katsuma said, The two of us have been friends since elementary school. Of course I'm a year younger than the rest of you guys, but that never really bothered Iri. Our parents were also close too, so needless to say me and her are pretty tight, Kota explained. We know everything about each other, our likes, dislikes, past. It'll take her a while to open up to other people though. Kota looked at Iri distantly chatting to a nervous Kokoro and James. But I'm sure she'll tell you her story eventually. Katsuma nodded. He didn't know Kota could be this insightful about their friend. Of course Katsuma didn't grow up with the duo, living on Nabu Island with his sister and dad for most of his life. He doesn't know the full extent of his friends' pasts and what drove them to become heroes. What he does know though is that Iri and Kota are good people at heart, regardless of their backstories and past mistakes. Even if Katsuma would find out, he wouldn't judge them for it. Because after all, they're his friends. Iri yawned as she woke up from a peaceful slumber, stretching her arms out into the air. Today was the day she and her classmates would be going on their field trip to the USJ. And while Iri was excited, she was also nervous. Although a villain attack hasn't occurred there in the last 7 years, Iri couldn't help but be nervous for the field trip. Regardless, Iri knows this is an essential part in her hero journey. Besides Mirio, her dad, and even the number 8 pro hero 𝐸𝐴𝐸 was going to be there. Even if villains were to attack the USJ, they would have a difficult time. Throwing on her school uniform and fixing her hair, Iri walked out of her room with a determined smile on her face. She walked towards the commons and noticed her classmates all sprawled throughout the area. Some were eating breakfast, some were trying to catch up on homework, and the others were talking amongst themselves. The only exception to that would be Razu, who was sitting all by herself in the corner. Iri had no ill will towards Razu. She actually admires the teen for how strong and talented she is. Not to mention she was able to almost defeat her in a 1 versus 1 battle with little to no use of her quirk, although she could have went without breaking her bones. Still, Iri doesn't seem to know why her classmates are purposely excluding Razu. Is it because of her quirk? The whole battle trial fiasco? Regardless, it just doesn't seem fair in Iri's opinion. I could always try approaching her, Iri thought with a grin on her face. Yes, that is exactly what I will watch a thinking about. A familiar voice asked as Iri turned her head around. It was her friend James Blair. Oh, nothing, Iri responded as she shifted her glance towards Razu. James seemingly picked up on that. Trust me, Iri, you shouldn't trust that girl. Iri tilted her head. Why not? She gives off bad vibes, James said. I don't know why, but she just does. Even Kokoro and Miyako try their best to avoid her, which is odd considering they're the nicest in our class. Ah, I see, Iri responded. It seems everyone here is wary of Razu. Iri really doesn't see why though. She's never felt any negative vibes coming from the teen. Just trust me, Iri, she's trouble. I don't want you getting hurt just by interacting with her, James warned her. Iri slowly nodded. James decided to change the topic. Anyways, I heard this theory from Hanmo that Mr. Aizawa is secretly your dad. Oh god, here we go again. Yuri and her classmates all gathered outside the bus stop donning their hero costumes. Today was the day of their field trip and Class 1 was excited. Chatter quickly filled the air as everyone talked amongst their friends. Looking over her shoulder, Iri noticed Razu standing off in the distance with a bored expression on her face. Iri wanted to approach the teen and chat with her, but Katsuma grabbed her by the arm and dragged her off over to where Kota and Tamashiro were arguing about. "Cats," Iri cried out. Katsuma chuckled. "Cats? Why cats?" Iri asked him. Well, Tamashiro decided to make a comment when Kota showed James a picture of your cat, Noriniko. Katsuma nervously explained. A fire lit in Iri's eyes as she angrily stormed over. "Don't you dare diss my cat, you ignorant ass," before Iri could continue. Her dad quickly wrapped her up in his capturing scarf. "Enough. Get on the bus now before I start writing detention slips," Aizawa said as he swiftly released Iri from his hold. "Yes, sir," the class shouted as they all boarded the bus. Iri sat down beside Kota near the window. She couldn't believe Tamashiro just insulted her cat like that. "I just merely called them fat," Tamashiro chided from nearby. Iri flipped him off before turning to face Kota. "What an asshole. When was he not one?" Kota responded in a sarcastic tone. "All right, class," Aizawa spoke as he stood in front of the entrance. "I expect everyone to be on their best behavior today. If any of you act out of line, I won't hesitate to send you all to detention." "Mr. Aizawa," Miyako spoke up. "Where's the million?" "I'm right here," a voice shouted. Miyako and Hanmo looked up and were immediately freaked out by seeing Mirio's face on the roof of the bus. Iri chuckled as Mirio casually phased through the roof of the bus, landing on the floor soundly. Aizawa facepalmed at his antic. Mirio walked towards the front of the bus and sat down beside Aizawa, pumped to get this day started. The bus eventually took off and headed towards the USJ. Iri could hear her classmates excitedly chatting amongst themselves, she herself getting into a discussion with Kota about the latest Deku fight. Everything was just going out great. A girl with long black hair walked into the building where the police force resided, documents in hand and a stern look on her face. She stopped by the receptionist and took out her badge, buzzing herself into the office area. "Good morning, Ms. Akatsutsumi." "Morning, Detective Akatsutsumi." "Morning." "Good morning, guys," Momoko said in a cheerful tone as she entered the area. "Did you guys make a break in the latest murder case?" "Unfortunately not," her co-worker Izo responded. "Tsukachi has been up all night trying to connect the dots." Momoko groaned as she sat the documents down on her desk. "I swear that man likes overworking himself. What am I going to do with him? We've been trying to convince him to retire for years, but he won't." Sansa walked in the room. "You would think after the hero versus villain war he'd consider it, but nope, he's still here working his ass off. You got to appreciate his dedication though," Coral responded. 15 years is no joke." Momoko chuckled as she sat down at her desk. "That couldn't be me." Before the group could continue conversing, Tsukachi walked in with a tired look on his face. He held up a document in the air with his left hand, seemingly proud of himself. "I finally connected the dots." Momoko and the others looked at him in shock. He actually did it. "The murders are all connected," Tsukachi explained. "They're all connected to this up-and-coming villain group called the Resistance." "The Resistance?" Momoko didn't know what to say. In her 8 months here on the force, she has never heard of this group before. They must be relatively new to the scene. "What is their motivations behind the killings?" Sansa asked. "I don't know. I still have yet to figure out a motive. What I do know though is that we need to be on the lookout for any suspicious activity," Tsukachi responded. "Yes, sir." The entire department responded. Momoko was still confused. Who are the Resistance and what are they after? Why are they going around targeting people? Sighing to herself, Momoko looked at the stack of files on her table and began working on another case. Hopefully Tsukachi will figure something out soon. Iri and her classmates got back from training at the USJ late in the afternoon. 𝐸𝐸 had them do a bunch of basic exercises and made them run through each zone to see how many robots they could rescue within a 2-hour time frame. It was exhausting, but Iri managed to get by relatively easy. Laying back on her bed, Iri glanced over at the window and sighed. Hero course training sure was tough. Suddenly she heard a knock on her door. "Come in," Iri shouted as Kota opened the door in front of her, covered in bruises. "What the hell happened?" Iri asked as she sat up from her bed. Kota wasn't like this when they left the USJ. All he had was some minor scrapes on his hands. Me and 𝐀𝐦 decided to have a sparring match outside the dorms. I won, of course, but goddamn did I nearly get my ass whooped. Kota responded as Iri activated her quirk to reverse the damage. "Ugh, you're so reckless," Iri reprimanded. Kota chucked, "And you act like you aren't." "I'm not nearly as bad as you are," Iri retorted, puffing her cheeks out. Kota was so annoying at times. "Please, I remember that time where you climbed a tree just to rescue a cat. You almost fell off twice on the way down," Kota said as Iri looked over at Noriniko, who was casually just laying in their bed sleeping. It was worth it, 𝐸𝐸 responded. Kota rolled his eyes. Seriously, I don't know what's up with you and your family's love for cats. They're adorable and you know it, 𝐸𝐸 responded as she pointed a finger at Kota. Not when they scratch the fuck out of your arm, Kota responded back. It seems every time he was around a cat, they had some sort of vendetta against him. That's probably because you smell like a wet dog after you train, 𝐸𝐸 casually said with a smug look on her face. Kota blushed. I do not. You totally do, 𝐸𝐸 teased. I do not, Kota exclaimed. The duo would continue arguing for some time until it was late at night. Kota said his farewells and walked out of 𝐸𝐸's room. 𝐸𝐸 sighed as she closed the door behind him. Kota was so annoying at times. 𝐸𝐸 yawned as she looked at the time. It was probably best she went and got some sleep. After all, it has been a long day. Turning off the lights and climbing into her bed, 𝐸𝐸 closed her eyes and dreamt of nothing but pitch darkness. The sirens of Tartarus blared loudly as hundreds of guards and pro-heroes stormed the facility. Someone had broken into the facility and was attempting to free an inmate, not just any inmate but Chisaki Kai of the defunct Shai Hasakai. Quickly making their way up to Chisaki's cell, a guard used a battering ram to bust down the door. There the group was met with numerous individuals wielding a bunch of gadgets. Before they could react, one by one they were all struck down by the armed individuals. They were shocked, beaten, and tied up with some sort of restraint that nullified their quirks. A woman with short blue hair and an Oni face mask grabbed a set of keys from one of the guards, using it to unlock Chisaki's cell. Chisaki was awake from the chaos going on around him, confused as to what was going on. Why were the group after him? A mere disappointing cripple. The woman yanked Chisaki up out of his bed and dragged him into the hallway. The boss requires your assistance. Boss? What the hell was she talking about? Chisaki thought as the group made their way out of Tartarus and into a getaway vehicle. Chisaki was tossed into the back of the vehicle, completely unaware as to what was going on. The mysterious individuals all got in and drove off from the prison. The group was on the road for a few hours before they stopped at an abandoned warehouse down in Toyama Prefecture. The woman got out of the vehicle and headed towards the back where Chisaki was being held at, grabbing the man by the collar of his prison uniform and dragging him inside the building. Once they made their way inside, the woman threw Chisaki down onto the ground and walked off. As Chisaki set up to regain his bearings, bright lights shone all around him. His vision was blinded for a few seconds before the lights dimmed. He could hear the sounds of footsteps coming towards him. There he was greeted by a woman with long red hair tied back in a braid looking down at him as if he were just a mere speck of dirt. Her red eyes looked mesmerizing, as if they could trap you in an illusion just by looking at them. The red-haired woman was most likely the leader the other person was talking about, Chisaki assumed. But why exactly did she want someone like him? So you're the infamous Chisaki Kai, the woman spoke. I have heard a lot of things about you, a lot of interesting things. I must say I'm quite a fan. Since when did I gain a fan base? Chisaki thought. Your ideals have inspired me in many ways. I, too, wish to rid the world of their superhuman abilities, the woman said as she walked around Chisaki in circles. You see, our world was quite perfect before quirks even existed. Less crime, less abuse, less problems. But once humans started developing quirks, our society changed. If you didn't have a cool or flashy enough quirk, you were discarded like trash. If your quirk was considered villainous, you were outcasted and forced into a mold society had already created for you. If you were born quirkless ... let's just say you were treated lesser than human. It's ridiculous. The woman actually had some truth behind her words. Chisaki knew all this based off of previous experience. Most members of the Shai Hasakai were victims of superhuman society. That's why I propose we get rid of the problem at hand, quirks. If everyone didn't have a quirk, then all those problems would go away, the woman continued. We could finally create a perfect utopia where everyone is equal. Nobody would get discriminated based off of their quirk or lack thereof. Chisaki already knew where this woman was going with this conversation. I want your help in finding a way to get rid of quirks once and for all. I know you've done it before and I know you can do it again given the right materials. Me and my organization can help you with anything you need so long as you provide us with what we want. A drug that can permanently get rid of quirks. The materials are not the problem. It's a certain girl's blood that you need. Chisaki spoke. Her name is 𝐸𝐸 and her blood is key to making the drug. Oh, what's so special about this girl's blood? The woman asked. Her blood can rewind the body to its cellular components. If you were to get a hold onto some of 𝐸𝐸's blood, then you would be able to accomplish your goal of ridding the world of diseases, Chisaki explained. The woman nodded. So all we would have to do is kidnap the girl and gather some ingredients to make the drug. Chisaki nodded. I can help you out with locating and capturing her, but I'm going to need something in return. What is it that you need? The woman asked. The remainder of the Shai Hasakai. The woman's lips curled up into a smile. I'll see what I can do about that. Mido, you and your team will break into the various prisons where the other Shai Hasakai members are being held in. Your objective is to free them at all costs. Yes, Mom. Cassandra, your group is to go out and locate the 𝐬𝐸 girl and gather information on her whereabouts, the woman ordered. Yes, Mrs. Bohemian. Now, Chisaki, you and I will be staying at headquarters for the time being. Make yourself comfortable, because you're going to be in for a long ride. The woman cackled as Chisaki felt a shiver run down his spine. He probably just made a mistake negotiating with the devil, but hopefully in the end it will be worth it. After all these years he's finally going to be able to accomplish his goals, and nobody will be there to stop him. The scene at Tartarus was one of chaos and urgency. Pro-heroes and guards moved about the facility, their faces grim and determined. Among them was Detective Akatsutsumi, her usually cheerful demeanor replaced with a steely focus. The breakout was unprecedented, and the implications were dire. Momoko walked briskly towards the central command center, where Tsukachi was already coordinating efforts. His face was etched with fatigue, but his eyes were sharp. Tsukachi, Momoko called out as she approached. What's the situation? Tsukachi handed her a tablet displaying security footage. We're dealing with a highly organized group. They broke in multiple facilities, neutralized the guards, and extracted Chisaki Kai and the 𝐲𝗵𝗄 𝐍𝐸. We're still piecing together how they managed to breach our security. Momoko frowned as she reviewed the footage. These guys knew exactly what they were doing. Have we identified any of the intruders? Not yet, Tsukachi replied, but we're analyzing the footage for any leads. We've also sent out alerts to other high-security facilities in the country. If they've broken the 𝐲𝗵𝗄 𝐍𝐸 out, they might target other imprisoned villains. As they spoke, Sansa approached them, his expression equally serious. We've found something, he said, leading them to a nearby room where several captured gadgets and devices were laid out. These were used by the intruders, Sansa explained. Most of them are high-tech gadgets designed to neutralize quirks. We're running them through our databases to trace their origins. Momoko picked up one of the devices, a small, sleek gadget that emitted a faint blue light. This tech is advanced. Whoever made this has resources and expertise. We need to find out who they are and what their next move might be. Tsukachi nodded. I've already put our best analysts on it. In the meantime, we need to ensure the safety of potential targets. Chisaki's breakout can't be an isolated incident. Momoko's mind raced. Oh my god, she muttered. What about the girl, 𝐸𝐸? Wouldn't the group go after her too? Tsukachi's eyes widened. You're right. We need to increase her security immediately. I'll contact UA and make sure they're aware of the threat. All right, I'll stay back and see if we can gather any more evidence, Momoko responded. Tsukachi nodded. Okay, I'll head to UA now. Back at UA High School, Class 1 was oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadows. They were still buzzing with excitement from their field trip to the USJ, unaware of the recent breakout that had just occurred last night. 𝐸𝐸 was in the common room chatting with her friends when she felt her phone buzz. 𝐸𝐸 quickly took it out and looked at the message on her screen. Her dad had just messaged her. 𝐸𝐸, I need you to come to the teacher's lounge immediately. 𝐸𝐸's heart skipped a beat. Her dad's messages were rarely this urgent. Did she do something wrong? Is she getting expelled? A lot of thoughts were currently running through her head right now as she rushed out of the dorms and towards the main building. When she arrived, 𝐸𝐸 found her dad, Principal Todoroki, Mirio, and Sensei waiting for her, both of them looking unusually tense. Dad, what's going on? 𝐸𝐸 asked, concern evident in her voice. Aizawa took a deep breath. There's been a breakout at Tartarus. Chisaki Kai and the 𝐲𝗵𝗄 𝐍𝐸 have been freed by an unknown group. We believe they might be after you, 𝐸𝐸. 𝐸𝐸's eyes widened, her face losing all color. She began to tremble, her breaths coming in quick, shallow gasps. And no, she stammered, her voice breaking. Her hands clutched at her chest as if she were trying to keep her heart from escaping. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she stumbled backward, her legs giving way beneath her. Aizawa quickly moved to her side, but 𝐸𝐸 was already hyperventilating, her small body shaking uncontrollably. She curled up on the floor, sobbing and gasping for breath, the sheer terror overwhelming her. He's coming for me. He'll hurt me again. I can't, she cried, her words barely coherent through her panic. Aizawa gently placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice soft but firm. 𝐸𝐸, breathe. Look at me. You're safe here. We won't let anyone hurt you. But his words seemed to barely reach her, lost in the overwhelming tide of fear that had gripped her. Aizawa continued to speak in soothing tones, trying to reach 𝐸𝐸 through her panic. 𝐸𝐸, listen to my voice. You're not alone. We're all here to protect you. 𝐸𝐸's breaths came in ragged sobs, her vision blurred by tears. She felt as if she were drowning, each breath a desperate struggle. Her hands clawed at the floor, seeking some form of stability in the storm of her emotions. Her dad's voice was a distant murmur, almost lost beneath the roar of her panic. But then, she felt another hand, warm and gentle, covering her own. 𝐸𝐸, it's okay, said a familiar voice. It was Mirio, his usually cheerful face now serious and full of concern. We're here. We'll keep you safe, I promise. 𝐸𝐸 looked up at him through tear-filled eyes, her breath still uneven but slowing slightly. Mirio's presence, along with Aizawa's steady reassurance, began to cut through the haze of her fear. She focused on their faces, their words clinging to them like a lifeline. Aizawa knelt down beside her, his expression gentle. "Eri, you're stronger than you know. You've faced him before, and you came out of it. You have all of us with you now. You're not alone." Eri nodded weakly, trying to draw strength from their words. She took a few more deep breaths, her sobs gradually subsiding into quieter tears. Just as Eri began to calm down, Tsukachi stepped forward, his expression serious but gentle. He knelt down to Eri's level, ensuring she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "Eri," he began softly, "I need you to understand something important. Right now, you're in a bit of danger. Chisaki and his group, they might be looking for you. That means we need to take extra precautions to keep you safe." Eri's eyes widened again, the tears starting to well up. Mirio squeezed her hand, his touch grounding her. "But listen to me," Tsukachi continued, his voice steady and calm. "We have a plan in place. We've already increased security around the school, and we'll be keeping a close watch on you. You're not alone in this. The best heroes are working together to protect you." Shinsu stepped in, his voice firm yet reassuring. "You're strong, Eri. You've been through so much and come out stronger on the other side. We won't let anything happen to you." Mirio knelt down beside Tsukachi, his eyes filled with determination. "We'll be here with you every step of the way, Eri. You can count on us." Eri nodded weakly, trying to draw strength from their words. She was still trying to process the information. Of course, Tartarus couldn't hold Chisaki and his crew back. It had already been broken into once by All for One in the Paranormal Liberation Front. The fact that it had happened again shouldn't have come as much of a shock to her. "But Chisaki, why Chisaki?" Shinsu stepped forward, his eyes filled with concern but also a determination to protect. "Eri, let's get you back to the dorms, okay? You'll be safe there." Eri nodded again, her grip on Mirio's hand tightening for a moment before she let go. Shinsu gently took her hand, guiding her out of the room with a reassuring presence. As they left, Tsukachi turned to Aizawa and Momo, his expression grave. "We need to discuss our next steps. Chisaki's escape raises significant security concerns, and we have to ensure Eri's protection around the clock." Aizawa nodded, his eyes sharp and focused. "Agreed. We'll need to double our patrols and possibly relocate Eri to a more secure location temporarily. I'll also inform the other teachers and staff to be on high alert." Momo, her face showing a mix of concern and determination, added, "I can work on creating additional security measures for the dorms. We can set up more barriers and surveillance systems." Tsukachi nodded, appreciating their proactive approach. "Good. The priority is to keep Eri safe and make sure we're prepared for any potential threats. We need to stay vigilant and ready for anything." As they discussed the details, Shinsu and Eri walked slowly through the hallways. Shinsu kept a steady pace, giving Eri the time she needed to process everything. "You're not alone, Eri," Shinsu said quietly. "We're all here for you, and we're going to make sure you stay safe." Eri looked up at him, her eyes still red from crying but filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Sensei." They continued their way to the dorms, Eri finding a small sense of comfort in Shinsu's presence and the unwavering support of her friends and mentors. Once she came back, Koda and Katsuma came running up towards her asking if everything was all right. Eri didn't know what to say. She was still holding back tears from earlier. Koda quickly took notice of Eri's fragile state and immediately dragged her off towards her dorm room, his protective instincts kicking in. Katsuma watched them go, confusion and concern clouding his features. Something wasn't right. He glanced over at his sensei, noticing the tense, alert posture that only heightened his suspicions. Determined to find out what was happening, Katsuma quietly followed them, making sure not to draw any attention. He stayed close to the walls, blending into the shadows as he made his way toward Eri's dorm room. Once he reached the door, he crouched down and listened carefully. Inside, he could hear Koda and Eri talking. "Eri, you don't have to worry. We'll protect you," Koda said, his voice firm yet gentle. Eri's voice, still shaky, replied, "But Chisaki, he's out. He's free, Koda. What if he comes after me again?" Katsuma's eyes widened in shock. "Chisaki? Who on earth was that? Why is he after Eri?" He pressed his ear closer to the door, trying to catch every word. Koda's voice took on a determined edge. "He won't get to you, Eri. We have everyone here, and we'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. You're not alone this time." There was a pause, and then Eri spoke again, her voice filled with a mix of fear and resolve. "I'm scared, Koda. Something bad is going to happen, I just know it." Katsuma felt a pang of sympathy for Eri. He knew how much she had suffered, and the thought of her being in danger again made his heart ache. He also felt a surge of determination. If there was anything he could do to help, he would. Quietly, Katsuma retreated from the door, his mind racing with the information he had just overheard. He needed to find a way to help protect Eri. He couldn't exactly ask her or Koda for information since this was a triggering situation for them. Sensei was off limits since he was more so or less the one who informed Eri of the situation. But who? Who could he turn to? Are you all right, Shimano-kun? A voice asked from behind him. Katsuma quickly turned around and noticed Razu standing there in the hallway, her cold, expressionless gaze staring right at him. I saw you running from Aizawa's room panicking. Did something happen? Katsuma was internally freaking out. If Razu went around and told everyone what he had just done, his friendship with both Eri and Koda would be down the drain. He swallowed hard, trying to think of a way out of this situation. Razu stepped closer, her eyes never leaving his. You look like you've seen a ghost, Shimano-kun. If there's something you know, you should tell me. It's not safe to keep secrets, especially if it concerns our classmate. Katsuma bit his lip, trying to resist the urge to spill everything. But Razu's calm, steady gaze seemed to pierce right through him. Katsuma, she said softly, her voice almost hypnotic. We're all in this together. If Aizawa-chan is in danger, we need to know. You care about her, don't you? He nodded, his resolve weakening. Then trust me, Razu continued. I only want to help. If you tell me what's going on, we can work together to protect Eri. She needs all of us right now. Katsuma hesitated for a moment longer, but the pressure was too much. He felt like he was being backed into a corner. Finally, he sighed and looked down at the floor. All right, he said quietly. But you can't tell anyone else, okay? Eri got told that some Chisaki guy broke out of Tartarus. She's really scared and Koda's trying to comfort her. Razu's eyes flickered with a hint of surprise, but she quickly masked it with her usual calm demeanor. I see. That's very serious. Thank you for telling me, Katsuma. We'll make sure Eri is safe. Katsuma gave a final nod before turning and hurrying down the hallway, desperate to escape the tension that had built up between him and Razu. He didn't look back, wanting to put as much distance as possible between them. Razu watched him go, her expression remaining cold and inscrutable. Once Katsuma was out of sight, she muttered under her breath, so, the Resistance has a hand in this after all. Interesting. It seems we will be meeting again soon. Momoko,